Hello everyone, we are here. Granted, a little bit late. This time actually wasn't our fault. The website was having technical difficulties. I had everything ready to go, but fanfiction.net was just like, nah, we're gonna be down for a couple days. So awesome.
Hey, at least we didn't lose any material. That would have been a nightmare.
Oh.
But that being said, let's do some reviews.
All right, let's do some reviews. So this is the reviews for the closing of Your Hero Academia Unleashed, which was the 6th arc for the Your Hero Academia series. We are beginning with Light Hero Kaiser.
All right, most interesting grade chapter, mate. Can't wait for more. Kaito, so any reason you're ripping apart all the 72 Calamity War Gundam frames?
Light says parts.
You're ripping apart all 72 frames for spare parts?
I don't need spare parts. I'm making a new Gundam.
And you need 72 for it. Goes pale. You're not.
Yes, I'm combining parts from 4 or 5 or 6 frames to make the Survivor Gundam.
Wait, only roughly 7. Why are you ripping apart alone 65 other frames?
Spare parts.
I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, right.
Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out.
Okay, honestly, I have no idea what this is reference to, but I can relate to Bionicle. So in the Bionicle series, one of the things they used to do was you would buy the individual units, right? And each one would come with a booklet of instructions, right? But in the back of the booklet, you would find parts of instructions to another set. And when you put together, like, you would have to get 2 or 3 sets together to make that complete instruction booklet, because those 3 sets could also be built into a combined structure of some sort.
Okay, you lost me.
Okay. So
sorry.
I kind of get what he's talking about, but not 100%. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
and
Kaiser.
Then Becca's just completely lost on this.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, thank you, Kaiser.
Thank you, Kaiser.
All right, Joe Clone. You just pulled out all the emotional stops for this one.
Yeah.
Love Kurai being nerdy. I can relate to 1.5 of the anime he named his moves after. All SAO, only the original Naruto. Dragon Ball, only through the video games.
Fair enough.
Eri joining the team, Lightning Drop, was a sweet sentiment. Hopefully it'll come to pass. The Red Swordsman returns?
Yeah, he does.
I really didn't see this coming. He feels like he just walked in from floor 40 after a hunt for some laughing coffin scum. I really hope you gave him some SAO's inspired moves that he and Kai could bond over, even for just a moment. In my head, I see that happening between them during a fight or spar.
Matar's shadow goes, Eclipse! Kai dodging the slashes. Hey, I know this move, SAO fanboy! What of it? Oh, you too? Do you even have to read my mind?
Now, who is he working with? Some shady characters in this PSC? Drama?
Public Safety Commission is what I'm going to assume that stands for.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. That 3-way brawl was epic. Deku turning red was a surprise, but I would chalk it up to everyone is different for why Kurai was so confused why Divine Eye wasn't manifesting then. Pretty awesome that they completely exhausted themselves as well.
Yeah, I don't know, like, how do I put this? Like, I kind of wanted the audience to more or less have the same expectations as Kurai, because, you know, with Kurai, we saw the first one that he unlocked was the Divine Eye. So, like, and I hadn't, like, put a whole, like, I had mentioned Deku needing to train for the chakra unlocks even before he used the Awakening Collar.
Yeah.
But I didn't go too much into detail with it. And, like, it wasn't just to set it up for this one, like, gag, for lack of a better term, but I just kind of was hoping that the audience would go for the same thought process that Kurai would have gone, because he just, like, if he slowed down and thought about it, he would have been like, oh, yeah, he's like, that absolutely makes sense that he wouldn't unlock the chakra in the same path as I did, because he's in the heat of the fight, because he's trying to think on the fly, because he's managing so many different things at the same time. He's just like, oh, he's going to try for a chakra power, he's going to go for Divine Eye. This is not Divine Eye. What just happened?
All right. Roman Torchwick. Oh, we getting some meat on the menu, boys.
Looks like meat's back on the menu,
boys.
boys.
Oh my gosh. And oh my gosh, the whole thing about Vestiges leading up to the 10th having some overdue and well-deserved closure and gratitude, it made me feel soft and want to hug someone. Aww. That was so sweet. Aww. So at the end, you're telling me this new villain is an anti-Akurui kind of guy?
Basically.
I am really terrified of the implications.
You should be.
What's his quirk? Lunar intelligence?
Ooh, that's a really... I actually like that. I like the
really
name
cool.
of that.
That's really cool.
That's a really good guess.
Is he Dio Brando levels of pettiness and genius Frankenstein together like a Nomu? Is he all for one from the future?
Ooh.
Can you tell I'm freaking out?
Kind of a little bit. I think Dio Brando is like a JoJo Bizarre Adventures character. In which case I'm sure it's like, sorry man, that reference flew over my head.
Yeah.
But the other ones are, yeah, that's a terrifying thought.
Thanks for the read, my friends. See you next time.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Joe Clone.
Thank you,
Thank you
Joe
guys
Clone.
for sticking with us for so long.
All right, Fairy Sing Girl. Ooh, I'm curious to know what the new villain is at the end there. If he is a villain. And
I'll explain something real quick right now. Yes, he's a villain.
Okay. And all of Class 1A offering their words of gratitude to Kurai's vestige. I like how even Bakugo thanked him as well, even though he didn't bow like the others all did.
Yeah, like, writing that scene, I was like, Bakugo has to have a thank you in there. Like, his character's progressed enough at this point where he has to thank him. But he ain't bound to nobody.
No, there's no way.
There's no way Bakugo bows to anybody. But thank you, Fairy Sin Girl.
Yeah.
I'm glad that last scene seems to have gone off as like it's going over with the audience as well as I hoped it would. And we now have like an essay from Endeavor to be All
Well,
Might.
okay, thank you, Fairy Sin Girl.
Thank you.
My jaw just dropped when I saw the size of this review. Okay, that's okay.
Let's see. Then there's
We'll have to
Silly
buckle
Curious
up.
is not as long.
Wow, Endeavor to be All Might is
But
taking
he didn't
over.
space anything either.
I got this. I think I
You got
can.
this
I can
one?
probably cover at
All
least
right,
half
let me
of
know
it
if you
before
need me to, let me know if you need me to tag in.
Okay. Spoilers for the story ahead in this review. Skip ahead if you want to read with fresh eyes. Thank you for that.
I always appreciate that he put, because like he covers a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He over the course of like he covers like multiple chapters at once, so I
Yeah.
always appreciate that he puts up the like, okay, this is spoilers.
Yeah.
Don't read if you haven't read.
As this seems to be the end of this particular arc, it seems as good a time as any to record my thoughts on the story's progression since my last comment. It should also be noted that if I waited any longer, I'm just going to end up writing an actual essay on the subject, so I'd best try to be succinct for the sake of your podcast's potential attempt at Breviloquence. Oh, I haven't heard that word in a while. I will begin by speaking on Kurai's journey as a psychological psychological recovery, which I shall quickly summarize saying that it fulfilled all my hopes concerning the difficulties that he should have faced. At no point did you force him into a full-on breakdown, but you kept dropping hints at little tells that showed us how close he was getting to losing it again a few times.
I think they're referring to like I think the last time they had reviewed, like we had just finished Kurai's like psychological break recovery, like him coming out of the hospital. So I'm gonna assume that's in reference to that. I haven't made him do a psychological break since that.
Okay. What I particularly enjoyed about this was the fact that many of these tells were very physical in nature. Many writers, both professional and amateur, focus solely on the
hell inside the character.
Okay, I'm gonna let you finish. Keep reading because it's I'm getting my brain.
Yeah, your brain's getting your eyes going cross-eyed. Let's see. Focus solely on the hell inside the character's head, with little to no regard to what it will physically do to the person as a result. I worried that you might perhaps have him focused on the physical relief that comes with having his arm restored as nature intended, to the degree that the physical marks of his psychological torment would be neglected, if not forgotten about. I see that you included the cliche need for sleeping medication in order to allow him to get enough rest, but as this is a problem that he had before this particular bout of trauma, I can let it go. I was far more intrigued by the fact that he seems almost paranoid regarding potential problems about any number of things, but then I remembered this is also nothing new for him, at least where his outlook on life is concerned. He has always been a wary individual, but with the new tics he's picked up because of his trauma manifesting, it's just more obvious to those around him. Yeah, I can speak to, like, on a personal level, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, I have trauma that I'm not going to go into, but it does manifest physically.
Yeah.
My physical tics are not nearly to the same degree as what I covered with Kurai, because obviously his trauma is a lot more grand. No, grand's not the word, but, like, he has a lot more of it.
Yeah.
is how I'll say it. Sorry, I'm running.
Severe.
Severe, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. So I gave him more pronounced physical like mental quirks that manifest themselves. And something that's interesting to me that I've noticed about myself in regards to the manifestation of physical tics and stuff when it comes to the expression of the trauma is that the traits that lead to these tics have always been there. They just are amplified and brought out more often. As a result, like, so, you know, growing up, I've always been taught to be mindful of my surroundings.
Yes.
Like, just be aware of what's going on around you. Following some events that led to my trauma, it just became, like, it didn't even have to be, like, a conscious thing for me anymore. Like, I would just automatically place my back to a wall whenever I'm in a room. I would look, I was like, okay, I would find, like, at least 3 exit points that I could go to, or so on and so forth. Like, any number of things so, like, that's some of the psychological manifestations. That's not even to speak of the physical ones. So I decided to take, like, you know, Kurai has always been very wary, like, whenever he has to interact with the public, especially more so now that he has become more famous. So I decided to kind of take that up to the next level, to where he's just waiting for something to, like, actively waiting for something to go wrong. Like, before it would have been like, he's like, kind of like, okay, maybe something will go wrong, I'll handle it. And now he's kind of on a point where he's just, like, actively waiting for something to happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that's relatable. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Endeavor to be All Might goes on to say, on that note, his handling of the subject with Eri, Mina, and Gran Torino was fully justified, at least in my opinion. I know it would be unreasonable for them not to worry about him. They would worry about anyone who has been through what he has gone through, and because each of them cares about him, even if it's to different degrees, it will be hard for them to stop trying to protect him from himself. By that same token, he was perfectly in the right to tell them that if they were going to be that worried about him in the first place, they shouldn't have let him loose on the front lines, as it were. You had him speak up for himself in resolute and well-argued manner, instead of simply having him cave in because he just couldn't trust himself anymore, or some such. It was truly refreshing breath to take, having Kurai conduct himself as he once did, though perhaps wiser in his new experiences, while he was not acting as Kai in the heat of a moment. I suppose what I mean by that is how I viewed his behavioral patterns from whenever he was preparing to go to work, i.e. his planning sessions with Yaoyorozu for their mock battles, or getting ready during the sports festival, meeting with All for One, etc. These are all times when he had to conduct himself as the hero he's aiming to become, but outside of any physical action taking place. For a while, it seemed as though we had lost sight of that in-between for him, so seeing that facet revived and even polished was a good moment. Okay, I see what he's talking about. To be fair, like, I guess the last time we kind of would have seen that was when they were planning for the second battle with the Naboo Island villains. Yeah. But, like, that was a group effort more than anything. Like, it wasn't him on an individual level trying to figure out what came next. So yeah, I guess I hadn't realized, like, it has been a minute since we saw him kind of just sitting with his thoughts and and then expressing them. Yeah. Like, because a lot of it lately has been like he's just having to think on the fly. Yes. Or just react, and he doesn't have time to think. So that's interesting. That's interesting that they bring that up. Maybe I need to pay more attention to what I'm having them do.
That's good though.
I mean, like, I'm trying to. It's so hard. It's really hard to maintain a hold on all these different character aspects when it's based on someone who I try to make not like me. Yeah. Like, if that makes any kind of sense.
It's definitely an exercise in empathy and thinking about how another person would think or feel in a certain situation, which is good, and that's why we're doing this. So
yeah. Let's see. Another facet of him that has hardly been touched, but was incredibly appropriate to return in this time, was the ruthlessness that Kurai carries within him. I would not go so far as to say that he is a ruthless person, but we have seen brief moments of a cold fury that enables him to enact some pretty terrible things. Mostly I'm referring to how he took Cinder's arm in retribution for losing his own, and even when he lost it at the bullies from his childhood. What made his interrogation of the humorized operatives much more chilling, as far as I am concerned at least, was that he was fully in control of his emotions when he did so. Sure, he more or less took out his temper on the police officers who were in league with the terrorists, but I think that goes even further to show that he has more self-control than people tend to give him credit for. While it is true that he showcased and was even motivated by his anger, I do not think it accurate to say that he allowed his passions to drive him in any capacity. This sets him apart from some of your other characters who tend to let their emotions do all the thinking for him. Perhaps only every once in a while. Yeah, like Mataris, Goron, definitely characters who are driven by their emotions to a large degree. Kurai is motivated by them, but he doesn't allow them to... Okay, sometimes he does allow them to control his actions, but I would say for the most part, he at least makes an active effort not to let that be the case.
Yeah.
He tries to use logic and reasoning and thinking about the big picture before he acts. So I'm glad somebody caught up on that. Seeing Mina's character development throughout this arc was a fascinating read for me. As a perpetual pessimist, I did have to worry that her progression would devolve into a simple relief at having Kurai back and doing whatever she had to in order to protect him, but this was far more layered and thought out. Yes, she started to lean into that particular trend, but you caught her out of it before it became the feared cliche. And surprise, surprise, all it took was an honest conversation between her and Kurai for her to begin understanding that she couldn't let her fear of losing him hold him back from achieving his full potential and even protecting himself. Take it a step further, and you actually shifted the focus of her fear before she was able to cast it aside, as much as one could in that situation anyway, by having her become afraid that Kurai might only truly act as his old self in the midst of a battle. That such a time would be the only moments where she would be able to catch a glimpse of the boy she first fell in love with. It was a dark, genuine fear that was brought to light for her, and its placement, as well as its address, were handled with masterful timing. There's something to be said for the do-or-die moments exposing the true nature of a person, and in the seconds before they fought Humorize, both Mina and Kurai showed their mettle. Yeah, I've put a lot into developing... I've put a lot more into developing their relationship, more so than I have, I think, any other ship that I've written. So I really tried to...
every other ship... I feel like most every other ship, it's like... They commit to each other, and then that's that.
Yeah,
and it's just...
And I'm trying to be more nuanced with that. And that said, like, I'm trying to pay attention to like little, to me, like, they got together, they're gonna stay together. The closest they got to a breakup was when she told him, was like, okay, we need to take a step back and reevaluate some stuff, but they didn't like straight out break up.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's still like. Yes, Kurai's back. Yes, he's ready to become the guardian hero again. But there's still some unresolved stuff that needs to be addressed between the two of them. And, like... How do I put this? Like, there are things that he's at fault for. But there were things that she's at fault for, too. And this kind of brought that out a little bit.
Yep.
And that she, like... Is like, for all the times that she talked about, like... Needing... Like she needed him to she needed him to be conscientious and to be as safe as he could be, like, and I say that term loosely because they both, like, at the beginning they both knew they were going to a hero profession, they both knew that there's only so much safe they can be, but then him dying made that so much more real for the both of them, and like for everyone around them, but them two especially. That reality became very harsh. And they had to figure out, do we continue to deal with this? It's like, because if we can't handle this, then it needs to stop. And they both decided, no, we want to still be in each other's lives. But they had to, like, not that they were going to call it quits, but that they had to take some time to understand what dealing with those facets would do to them.
Yeah.
Like, they accepted that those burdens were going to continue to weigh on them, but they just needed to take some time to take a look at, like, okay, what's this going to do to me? How has this affected me? How is this going to continue to affect me? And then they had to look at, like, okay, how does that affect how I see you? And she kind of started to backslide a little bit, and he had to call her out on it.
Yeah.
Which, and to be fair, her reasons for backsliding were almost justified, like, because of everything that they had gone through together. But he did have to be like, okay, look, if we're going to move forward on this, if you're going to let me move forward on this, you need to move with me. So that conversation needed to be had.
Yeah.
Let's see. Endeavor to be All Might goes on to say, in spite of everything between them, the good and the bad that could yet be properly resolved, they showed one another that they could be heroes at any time they were called upon because they trusted in each other completely. They took great risks in doing so, granted, but their faith was rightfully rewarded. Yeah. Eri beginning to come into her own as a hero in the current time has been fun to read also. Her social position is a truly bizarre one, with her being surrounded by those she once venerated in the future, allowing her to see them in their formative years while they themselves look to her for answers, as she would have once done to them. On top of that, she's learning what it means to be a hero in a world that can still be saved, as opposed to struggling just to survive in a world that has long been lost to the dark. I don't think that I can call her a favorite of mine in the same way that I can with the Hogasha boys, but she is certainly a dynamic force worthy of addition to this incredibly thought-out version of My Hero Academia. She does not feel forced in, and she brings as many problems as she does solutions, so her presence only enhances the sense of narrative balance, though she could have easily slanted things too far in the hero's favor. I would say that her presence has, so far, still slanted things pretty hard in the hero's favor, so make of this what you will, that this new villain that's being introduced is going to even the scales, not just for Akuduri, but for her also. And you'll kind of start to see what I'm talking about in this chapter that's coming up here. Izuku's growth as a person and in handling Energon are also praiseworthy. With regards to the new quirk, I am honestly not bothered by the fact that there is little time spent on how he is physically adapting to the power, because we as the audience have already seen enough of that with him getting used to One for All. It is enough for me to know that he is working hard on mastering the power, and that he has a lot more help in doing so this time around. I don't need to see the journey all over again. That said, I do like how you took some time for him to compare himself to Kurai in the use of One for All, and how he felt that moment of jealousy when he saw how easy it was for Kai to make use of it. This is juxtaposed by his declaration in the next chapter to not just catch up to Kurai, but to do more with Energon than the other boy ever did. What a contrast, him growing beyond wanting to be just like All Might, to wanting to become even greater than someone who is arguably more insurmountable. I must now take a moment to address that I love the parallels between the first movie arc and this one. I'm sure you've already quoted George Lucas in some capacity already concerning this topic, but I needed to say it too. It's like poetry, it rhymes. We have an awakening Energon with two uses of One for All in both instances, but this cannot be called a carbon copy. Not only is this a showing of the new generation coming in to replace the old, we see the individual efforts of every hero involved as opposed to one or two group efforts. They are all acting in accordance with a single goal, but we see every single one of them making their own individual contributions to the fight, even with the B team, as it were. Eri moves to take out the bombs so that the more experienced combatants can take the main threat, and in that fight we see Deku and Kai both taking their own turns to make their analyses so they can take on their enemy with efficiency. Bakugo, Ground Zero, learning to take on the role he needs to play and not necessarily the role he wants, was superbly handled, while Mina seemingly proves to herself that she is, in fact, worthy of being the one to watch out for Kurai. I say so not in the sense that she went out to prove that she is just as good as him, or any such sort, but that she essentially realizes this in the aftermath of the fight when she decides to keep her scars. It's a measure of girl power, for lack of a better term, that didn't make me gag, which is so damn hard to find in this day and age.
Nice. That's a high compliment.
I appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, like, the best, like, I'm sure I've talked about this before, but the best example of girl power that I can think of in modern day cinema is the end of season 2 of Mandalorian.
Yes.
Where you have Fennec Shand, Bo-Katan, the Mandalorian that came with her, and Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune. The four of them are like tearing through a ship. And like,
sick.
Like, it wasn't like in the Avengers Endgame where like all the girls just randomly showed up at the same point on the battlefield, and it was like, all right, y'all look cool, but what was the point of that? Yeah. This seems like they like interrupted the cinematics of the moment of battle to have that. I was like, okay, this feels very forced. But with this, it was like, nah, we had Boba Fett and Din Djarin doing their thing, and this is where these characters fell in, and I knew they were awesome because I had seen each of them
doing their
throughout
own thing,
not even in the cartoons, but like just throughout the series.
Yeah.
Like, they had already showcased their skills. They had showed why they would be in that position. And then they tore it up. And it was awesome. It wasn't like, yeah, girl power. Is like, no, they showed up. They did their job. Move on to next point.
Yeah.
They didn't stop for a power pose or whatever. They just did what they needed to do. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, that was
I'm all for that.
Yes.
So, yeah, like, I definitely relate on this, like, it's so hard to find girl power stuff that doesn't make me want to hurl.
Same, yeah.
As the resident woman here,
be,
what's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's got to be done right.
Yeah.
Like, if you're making a big show of it, that's obnoxious. But if you have
I could say the same thing for guy heroes, too.
Yeah, but if you have, like, solid character development and it's well written and it's just, if it comes natural, that's when it's like, okay, this is a cool character I can get behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And like I said, like, it should be done for guy characters, too. I should say. Like, there is something to be said for the male psychology of, like, you know, puffing up your chest and, like, squaring up and getting a feel for the other guy before you actually start throwing hands. There is some of that, but it's been taken to kind of a ridiculous degree in some areas to where I'm like, okay, it's not just the girl power these days. The macho man thing that's starting to come back in a way that ain't good.
Yeah.
It's like let's fix that, Hollywood.
Yeah, well, Hollywood's so hung up on quote unquote toxic masculinity that they're like.
Well, they're just at the point where it's like, they're just like basically at this point saying that masculinity in and of itself is toxic. It's not.
But then they're reframing it in this weird way, and so it's really strange. It's very convoluted because they're reframing both masculinity and femininity in their own way.
Yeah.
And it's like no, like masculinity becomes toxic when the man is when the man becomes toxic, when the man is being abusive, when the man is being a jerk. That's the only time, you know?
So I've got some friends who disagree with me on this, but I'm going to go ahead and say this anyway, is that to me the best example of toxic masculinity, which I do think there is certain cases of it, and there's some of my friends who are like, no, it's like toxic masculinity doesn't exist. That's a toxic man who's not being a man. And I can see the argument for that. I can see both sides. But what I'll say is that if you look at the movie Tarzan, right? You have Clint, the guy who comes in like big man, drinks, smokes cigars, like goes hunting and stuff.
Narcissistic.
I was gonna say, up to that point, I don't really have a problem. The problem becomes with his attitude, and that he is a narcissist, and that he wants things to go his way,
and
when
the way
they don't,
treats others.
and the way he treats others. When things don't go the way he wants, he starts throwing a fit. Like he starts acting like a child. He acts like a giant man child.
But that's acting
and he like just straight up uses violence to get what he wants when things don't go his way.
Yeah.
Like he does a mutiny. He just whacks Tarzan across the face with the butt of a rifle. Not cool, dude. Tarzan, on the other hand, very manly dude, like big, strong, protects, like very out to. He also uses violence, but it's to protect his family, it's to protect his friends. He only enacted violence when it came down to a last resort. It wasn't his go-to.
Yeah.
That to me is what masculinity should be used. It's like there's, we talk about this in the karate in the dojo that I train at. We talk about how peace is not a virtue if you are not first capable of violence. If you are not capable of being violent, if you're not capable of fighting back, then peace is not a choice. You're just a pacifist. You're incapable of rendering violence. That makes you helpless. If you can fight back, if you can choose to raise your fist, if you can choose to take up arms, and you don't, and you extend a hand of peace first, that is what masculinity should look like.
Yes.
If you do not have the capacity for violence, then peace, the peace that you extend means nothing.
And by the same token, you have what I would call toxic femininity when you when girls jump into this victim mentality, right? And we use that to manipulate. And by the same token, we can be feminine and not be helpless.
Yes.
We can be feminine and
take Princess Leia.
Not be manipulators, right? That's the OG girl power there.
Yeah, I love Carrie Fisher's response when parent there was an interviewer or a parent or some type who once asked her like, what am I supposed to tell my kid when they see you in that bikini from episode 6? She was like, she was like, tell him a big fat slug put me in it. I didn't want to be in it, so I killed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was like, what? She was like, she's like, my character didn't choose to be in that, and she took out the guy that made her do it.
Yep, exactly.
I was like, bravo.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing. It's both genders have a role, and both genders can be toxic, and both can also shine where they're at if they are honoring others, and so we could go into that I mean, that's a whole can of worms.
That's a whole other. That could be. We could do a whole other podcast on that.
100%. But let's get back to that that review.
Let's see. So he closes that paragraph by saying, "I think it has to do with the fact that she didn't set out to prove her worth, but that her actions in and of themselves proved said worth, and that is the way it should be done." We pretty much just covered that with the Mandalorian season 2 finale. Let's see. Goes on to say, "Finally, we address Akurui, my all-time favorite sidekick who needs his own series." Sorry, it slipped out. "I meant to say, thank you very much for giving us more consistent Sassy Boy content. I might be the only one who was 100% with him on using the humorized members as test subjects for his new defense systems, and I can't tell if it's because I want to know what his countermeasures actually were, or if I just wanted to see his commentary while everything went down. Probably both." Oh boy!
Man. Endeavor to be all might spicy today.
Well, oh man. We here at Not Your Average Productions do not condone human experimentation on anybody. Let's see. Also, if what you were saying in the last Omaki is anything to go by, it seems to me as though this next arc might feature a villain more tailored to Akurui himself, or have I misunderstood something? You have not misunderstood something. I hope I'm correct, because if he's getting a big villain, and I kind of shudder to think what kind of person could pose a direct challenge to the kid genius, that means that he will continue to be a consistent character in the series, and I always love having him around. Have I mentioned that I love this character? I should also note... No, you've never... I never would have guessed. I should also note that I absolutely love his interactions with Hatsume. As I've said before, I am not a romantic sort, which I think might be why this dynamic makes me smile so much. There's absolutely no romantic tension between the two of them, but their dynamic feels incredibly fluid. I know there are going to be some people out there calling for this ship to sail, I think.
What he's going to say is sail.
But I honestly hope it doesn't. Not everyone needs a significant other to complete their character arc, and I feel like doing that with these two would just cheapen things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Closing notes concerning the progression of the story itself. Kai's reveal of One for All to the world was so damn smooth that I must applaud your work to rearrange events in such a capacity to make such a thing possible without making it feel forced. Thank you. Endeavor mellowing out concerning Kurai was also handled well enough for it to feel like Endeavor and not some other character wearing his face doing the talking. Had you not included his perspective of the events following Kurai's death, I do not think that this would have worked out as well as it did. So I shall say well done on the advanced preparation concerning this character progression. Okay, yeah, like I knew like this was coming, and I needed to have a moment, like at least a moment, where Endeavor reflects on what Kurai's death means, like for society and for him even.
Yeah.
And the chapter where everybody's feeling the loss of Kai seemed like the best place to do it, because like otherwise I'd have to go into like the whole Endeavor agency arc, and like to me at that like with the hospital arc that I was doing, it would have felt like the story would have gone in two different directions, and it's just too much for me to handle.
Yeah.
And I think it would have taken away from each arc would have taken away from the other one in some capacity. So I just decided to not go with it because we have close enough in the anime. Let's see. My final point of interest is the beauty of a scene that you gave everyone in Class 1A a chance to thank the 10th. I was legitimate... What's that?
Nothing. I'm just remembering the same thing.
I was legitimately brought to tears... Oh, boy. I was legitimately brought to tears by the end because of how much I felt for that version of Kurai in that moment.
Aww.
This is the version of the character whom we, or at the very least I, have come to care for as a great story hero that has arguably suffered more than the Kurai we have been following around throughout the narrative, and yet has never been given a chance for closure. I'm sure he felt something along the lines of relief when the current Kurai decided to move in the right direction, but he is still his own person, or at least as much as he can be in present circumstances. He needed his own closure, and damn it, this is one of those moments I wish I could see animated by Bone Studio with Yuki Hayashi's masterpiece of a soundtrack playing in the background. Is there a particular soundtrack that you listen to while working on that scene? Because... I don't know. Something about it just tells me that there was meant to be music accompanying it. Two pieces come to mind. the instrumental version of Might You, and season 4's track I'll Be Your Hero, which is what plays when Lemillion sacrifices his quirk to save Aerie.
Stop.
Like, both are very emotional pieces for me, but, like, I listened to a lot of music while I was doing this scene, because, like, I went through this scene so many times trying to get... Like, this was one of those scenes where, like, I wrote it in advance, and then I kept coming back to it, and I kept polishing it, because I was like, I need this one to be right. This one has to land perfectly. Like, this is just one of... This is, like, just one of those moments where it's like, no, I can't... There can be no manner of half-ass. And, like, I don't half-ass anything in this story. But, like, comparatively, like, there can be no measure of half-ass happening in this one. Like, this one needed to hit.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. But, yeah, a lot of music went into my listening... A lot of music I was listening to when I did this. But those two pieces in particular are the ones that would stand out to me in this moment. Not necessarily... Like, and I would say more the I'll Be Your Hero track, because Might You ends up being a little too triumphant at the end to really fit this scene. And, like, it's not a triumphant scene. Like, it's certainly, I would say, uplifting by the end of it, but it's not a sense of triumph.
Yeah.
It's a sense of relief, kind of. And I felt like the I'll Be Your Hero, while there are some triumphant themes in it, more plays to that kind of...
It's more of
that
an
kind
emotional,
of feeling. Yeah, that's more emotional. So yeah, I hope that answers the question well enough.
I love that you asked that, because he's always putting music with his thoughts when he's doing this stuff.
I think I annoy her sometimes with it.
No!
You sure about that?
No, I mean, I think you listen to a lot of the same stuff. And I, because I'm the child of a musician and I have ADD, I have a hard time listening to the same stuff all the time. And so I have to change it up. And I have my old favorites, but I have to change it up a lot. And I think especially when you're like in a writing groove, you kind of listen to the same stuff. But that's good though, because you're in that mindset, you're getting your brain going. But I think it's when we're like in the car going places. But that's another
argument to be had. So I'll explain this on my end, is that, like, I associate certain music tracks with certain emotions, right? And when I'm writing certain scenes, or I'm about to write certain scenes, I need to be able to feel certain emotions while it's happening.
Yes.
So I default to those music tracks.
Oh, yeah, and it makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Like, hey, you're the one calling me out for apparently being annoyed at you. For everyone's gonna be all mad. Like, why are you being mean to him about his music?
No, she's not mean to me about the music. I was making a joke. Because I do listen to the same tracks a fair amount, and I understand that could probably get annoying after a while. But I'm sorry, it's part of my process.
I'm the child of a musician. Listening to the same thing over and over and over again is just kind of the part of the gig.
Cool.
That doesn't bother me.
All right.
No.
Let's see. They finish off by saying, I had been wanting something to this extent ever since the 10th's appearance in Kanto, where he met with the friends he hadn't seen in years and couldn't stick around to have even one moment with them like he must have so desperately wanted to. You delivered to my expectations in spades, and I thank you for it. I shall eagerly await the challenges that will be presented to Kurai and Akururi in Your Hero Academia Enmity. Happy writing, Mataris. I'm sure we'll be seeing great things from you and your Red Swordsman counterpart with this story in the days to come. I mean, I hope you guys will think it's great, and I am, like... Again, I'm so excited to be able to bring Mataris into this, like, and like I'm like, and the reason I say it that way is because I'm like, I didn't want to bring him into this because I was afraid that he would take over as the main character, like just by default. But I'm super happy that I have found a way to prevent that from happening. The way that I can involve him, I'm like, yes, I can involve him, but not have him like be what the story is centered around.
Yes.
So I'm super excited for that, and like. I'm so excited with what I get to do with him.
To me, like, for me, I get, like, Boba Fett feels, because he's, like, not, like, in so many areas when he pops up in Star Wars. Like, he's not the main character, but he's this, like, super cool, intense presence, and you're like, whoa. Yeah,
okay, so funny that you say, like, the Boba... So, like, to me, like when the way Boba Fett showed up in Mandalorian Season 2, like, that's how he should have, like... Boba Fett was fun for me. I do wish that there were some things that were done differently. But like when he showed up in Mando season 2 and just whacked everybody with a gaffy stick.
Yes.
And then got the armor on, like I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
I was, and the direct, like I love what the director of the episode said. He was like, as far as I knew, this was the only chance we were going to get to use Boba Fett.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that we got Boba Fett.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's what I want to do with Mataris here, but I'm gonna keep it consistent. Mm-hmm. So I'm so excited. Like I enjoy writing the character, and it's just like for the longest time, he wouldn't have fit into the genre, but now we're approaching a tone in the story where he feels appropriate.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Endeavor to be All Might, for your review. We appreciate it. And I'm glad you guys are enjoying the story so much. Let's see. We've got the last one, Silly Kira. Do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to do it?
I guess I can take it.
Okay. This one's broken up a little bit,
yeah.
so.
I'm not crying. I'm not. You're crying. I am, buddy. I have cried today, so you're probably right.
Oh, man.
There's a fair amount to unpack here, most of which I loved, and the stuff I didn't love, I'd say that I at least liked.
Okay.
Kurai and Izuku taking a time before to be nerds is fun to see, and something that's been missing for a while. Not surprising considering everything that's been going on. I know we had them being battle analysts pretty consistently, which is a showing of that trait, but it was nice to see them sitting down with it. Mina roasting Kurai on his choice in favored media is also a good time, but I noticed she didn't lean too hard into taking the piss out of Star Wars this time. Is she starting to come around?
To be announced.
Hot damn, Mataris is Matarising more than I have ever remember him doing. It's not a bad thing for the narrative per se. I don't know. I was taken aback. Maybe that's just clearly means Silly Kita hasn't read Dragon War Roar. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah,
but that's amazing. Maybe that's just because it's been a minute since I've read your SAO stuff. But when you said the things that we're going to be taking a darker turn with this approach of the war arc, I suppose I should have expected something to do with him. That said, I can easily see now how you're going to be laying the groundwork for some of the darker parts of the Hero Society, and I like this story.
And the like in this.
Story, sorry.
That's okay.
It's
Mataris is Matarising more than I remember him doing. That's my favorite quote.
I was going to say that's
amazing.
A small note of mine is that in the Omaki, you talked about it felt comfortable to step back into more comfortable territory for a moment. And from where I'm standing, it shows. You've become very good at writing organic scenes from the superhero genre, and all of your previous works with Mataris don't really fall under that category. Yet, the pacing and the flow of the story remained consistent and easy to follow.
I'm not sure I follow what.
Well, it's a different genre.
Okay.
It's a different genre, and you didn't.
Oh yeah, he's from the fantasy genre.
You didn't just throw him in and have him act like he would in his other stories. Okay. You melded him into this story well. Yeah. I think that's what he's saying.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
It didn't. Yeah, exactly. He's about to say it. It didn't feel like the genre switched mid-chapter, in spite of the fact that Red Swordsman comes from a different category of literature.
Okay.
I feel like it would have been easy for you to settle more into your older writing style out of habit because of the memories you would have associated with the character. Sorry. But you have brought new and old together quite efficiently.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm not going to say that it was a struggle not to... Like, it wasn't a struggle to not fall back into old writing habits because I've been doing this style for so long.
Okay.
Like it was easy to keep the writing style. Like, I think the closest that I may have come to sliding back into old territory would have been, like, just his mannerisms. But those are a part of his character, so I don't think that even needs that doesn't even need to be addressed, really. But okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad that. I'm glad that it stayed. I'm glad that this isn't the because he's been in this story before.
Yeah.
He just kind of showed up and then left during the provisional licensing arc. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And like originally that was the only time I was gonna have him show up, but so this isn't like reintroducing the character in a sense to this story, but I can see how like I could have backslid a little bit. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
All right. The three musketeers all scrambling to catch up with one another and their classmates in their individual ways was a good thing to cover. The showing of which saves you from this trap of an easy power game simply for the story's sake.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see Kurai in particular pushing himself in this fashion because of the three of them, he would be the last one you would imagine would need to catch up, especially with in the combat sense. But his explanation concerning his extra efforts were all the well warranted. At the same time, we do still see that he is the one who has been training for this lifestyle the longest out of them, and in a way, he wins.
In the way
he wins through his near loss due to. Okay, I'm gonna let you read because I can't apparently.
Okay, no. Let's see. At the same time, we do see that the one who has been training for this lifestyle the longest out of all of them, in the way that he wins. Though his near loss due to basic instinct was pretty funny, and something that honestly made me wonder if he wouldn't lose for a moment. I wonder which other chakras Deku has unlocked. He has 3 other ones unlocked right now, but I'll leave you to wonder which ones those are for the moment. Even funnier is the fact that these 3 powerhouses are all very afraid of upsetting one Mina Ashido. A thought that occurs as I write this is a marked difference between Deku Gravity and Mirai is that Uraraka doesn't seem to worry about Izuku pushing himself too hard, at least where training is concerned. I'm sure it's different when it comes to field work, like in the original canon, which is cool to see. Both seem like healthy relationships, but each one has a different dynamic to them, even, or especially, when it comes to the little things. Great attention to detail there. Oh, okay. First of all, thank you. Second, yeah, I mean, all 4 of them are very different people, so the way that they interact with one another, just because both pairs are in a romantic setting, it doesn't mean that they're going to default to the same interactions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, different strokes for different folks, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, okay, like, I hadn't even thought about that. Like, the way that, like, Mina handles Kurai overworking himself as opposed to Uraraka.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think it just comes natural.
Yeah. Well, like, think about it this way, because in the original canon, Uraraka doesn't tell her feelings to Deku because she wants to give him room to give his all at being a hero and not worry about what's going on with her.
Yep.
So, even though they are in a relationship in this canon, I feel like that attitude would still be there, would still kind of like... it would be one of the factors in the way they interact with each other concerning their works on heroism.
Well, yeah, I mean, she respects that part of him, and she's going to honor that.
Yeah. And it's not even that Mina disrespects, she just has and rightfully so, she has a little bit more of a tendency to worry.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. That's the difference is that's a big part of why Uraraka is attracted to him is because of that part of him.
Yes, very much so. Let's see. Roman Torchwick arrives, and he's got an idea trigger bomb that he can auction off to the Paranormal Liberation Front of all people. Can't wait to see how you play out this development. Oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome.
Bro.
Kurai giving one of the vestiges the chance to enjoy something they wouldn't have been able to do in a long time was a surprisingly wholesome tidbit that I never would have expected, but enjoyed very much all the same. It also allowed for a segue into a scene that I very much wanted, but wasn't sure if we would get to see. I'm gonna assume that they're talking about how Kurai let the I think it was the 6th vestige play chess through him. Because that does segue into what I think. Yeah, the 10th. So Kurai's vestige getting thanked by all of his friends is definitely not the reason I've been crying. Absolutely not. There's no way that scene had me crying buckets at 2 a.m. No idea what you're talking about. I wasn't moved at all when he was able to finally stop blaming himself for dragging the Kurai back into the fight. No one heard me crying when he got to feel Mina hug him again. No one heard anything, damn it! I'm surprised at how strongly people feel about this.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely crying with this one, and yeah, I mean, if they've been following it this long, it's kind of hard not to.
All right, fair enough.
Me, I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad that the emotions are strong with this one. Just like, I hope you're okay, man. Let's see. He says, actually, that's not true. I think my roommate might have heard me using some choice expletives when I read about some new villain schmuck who thinks that he's going to be targeting the Hikari brothers. Who does this guy think he is?
Oh, no.
You gotta start reading this during the day, man. Stop waking up your roommate. Good grief, this guy's gonna want to kill me. An excellent end to this part of the Guardian Heroes story, and I can't wait to see what comes next, especially as it seems like we're getting more Akurui next chapter. See you then. Yeah, you guys are about to get more. You're mostly gonna get Akurui this next chapter, actually.
So since everybody's crying, let's move into
Let's move into it. Yeah. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for all the reviews. Let's kick off Your Hero Academia Enmity. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Enmity. Okay, cool. I have such a hard time saying that one.
Like
I don't know why.
Benedict Cumberbatch with the penguins. He's become afraid of the word because he's been corrected so many times.
I'm kind of afraid of it now. Enjoy the story.
In my past brought me to the end. I was stuck in limbo, hoping to be dead wrong. No, they took everything from me. Nothing left to see, burning down slowly. Can't bury the truth, but past is far from death. The chances we lose when we chose never to forget. When choices made, efforts the pain, the taste of blood. Was the beginning of the end. Beginning of the end.
Peerless. I need a favor. I had a feeling this was coming. Kurai raised an eyebrow at Ida as he held out his hand for the wrench he had requested, which the taller boy surrendered without taking his eyes off the textbook in his other hand. Seeing that his friend was disinclined to giving us full attention, he sighed before aligning the wrench on the appropriate bolt and saying, "Look, I know I'm probably going to have to argue a pretty solid case here, but I'd appreciate it if we could just go to the part where we make an agreement. Shake on it." The two of them were in a garage where the teachers kept their vehicles, for those who had them. All Might had generously allowed Kurai to keep his motorcycle in what would have been his spot, as he did not own a car himself. The white-haired boy had asked his old friend along to help him perform maintenance on his bike, as it had not been serviced since before the events on Nabu Island. It had been no small surprise for Kurai to find that the bike had survived the cataclysmic storm created by Nine, which had damaged so many other things beyond hope of repair. All things considered, the damage that it sustained was pretty light and easily fixable for someone with his level of experience. Given the level of sentiments attached to the vehicle, Kurai felt that nothing short of a miracle that not only had the bike survived the storm, but that it had been brought back with the other students during his stint in the afterlife. Apparently, the original plan had been to gift it to Shuken, seeing as it had been his father's before Kurai came to own it, but following the hero's resurrection, his cousin had immediately abandoned any claim to it. He said that it was a welcome back gift for his relative, but everyone in the family knew it was probably more to do with the fact that Shuken was terrified of riding motorcycles. Normally, Kurai would do these repairs with Akurui, but seeing as the other boy had work to do today, he had asked a class representative to accompany him, as he was at least familiar with the tools that he would be utilizing for this project, even if he didn't know exactly how they worked. He had been as helpful as he could be thus far, which Kurai took to mean that the other boy was possibly in a good enough mood for him to at least consider granting him a favor. Ida now turned a page before he answered the other boy's inquiry with the words, "The outcome may depend on your initial presentation." Kurai scowled before he levered out a stubborn nut while he muttered, "Do you know what I'm going to ask for?" "Perhaps, but I won't know for certain until you've actually asked." "Okay, fine. You want me to spell it out?" The former cyborg grumbled as he set aside the freeze screw, torn hose, and wrench. Looking directly at Ida, who from where he was crouched, he said, "Mina needs a new work study because Musha didn't appreciate being left out of the loop when it came to her going to Clade with me and the others. She hasn't had any luck getting in with another agency since seasonal hiring has already gone through. Gran Torino won't take her on. He says this because he can barely afford Ari and I, but he's not even really paying us. Pretty sure he's just being crabby about the whole thing." "And what do you think I can do about it?" Ida replied as he finally looked up from his chosen study material. "I think that if I ask Tensei to take her on for a work study, he's going to ask his brother, the class representative, what he thinks of his surprise applicant." Kurai deadpanned. "Will you put in a good word for her?" Ida stared at his friend for a few moments in silence before he straightened his glasses and said, "I told you that dating a classmate could lead to consequences for you both." Considering she helped me save the world, I was hoping you might consider her involvement in the preservation of my sanity as a pro, not a con. His friend replied while maintaining his flat look, even as he picked up a new hose pipe that he had previously set aside on the ground. Look, you don't have to tell me that our relationship has definitely had its drawbacks, but even you can't argue that it's done me a lot more good than harm. If there's a point that you want to make, please just make it so I can move on and figure out what else I can do to help my girlfriend after she risked her career to help me regain my sanity. I know what she risked for you, Ida replied calmly. More importantly, I know that what she risked during the battle against Kurai. At this, Kurai's deadpan expression turned into one of confusion. But what's that mean? He inquired. I'm assuming you mean something beyond the obvious risking of life and limb. I know that she let you go so that Midoriya, Eri, and you could fight Fleck Turn, his friend explained. She acted as a hero when she was needed, even though she could have easily chosen to act selfishly and stay by you. She showed a level of commitment to her duty not often seen among those in heroics who are romantically involved with a peer. Wait, Kurai said as his eyes narrowed slightly at Ida. It sounds like you actually approve of her actions? While I can't condone her disregard for her mentor's orders to remain on standby, it should be noted that she didn't exactly break any rules when she did. The class representative shrugged. It seems like something Tensei would have done, were he in her shoes. So does that mean... I spoke to my brother yesterday regarding Ashido's situation. Ida said to cut him off as he set aside his textbook. Many hero agencies have undergone reassignment and staff overhauls following the events of the Idea Trigger Bomb threats, so it's not as though she's the only misplaced student hero out there. She and I are both scheduled for an interview with him the day after tomorrow. But both of you? Kurai asked, his expression now one of great surprise. But weren't you doing well at Manuel's agency? As I said, a number of agencies have undergone staff changes due to the reassignment of heroes to different regions in the last month, his friend answered quickly. Manuel cannot afford to keep me on for a work study after he was relocated to a different district. Moving expenses and the like put a dent on his agency's finances. That sucks, the white-haired boy said with another frown. He sounds like a good hero to hear you tell of it. He is. Ida nodded quickly. Unfortunately, this problem has hit a fair number of smaller agencies, though the majority of our classmates' mentors have remained unaffected, being higher up in the billboard charts, and therefore being able to afford such changes more expediently. The Ida family agency, in spite of my brother's absence, has been able to hold out well with its finances so that Tensei was able to return to a well-functioning workplace. One that can afford 2 new work studies out of nowhere. Kurai asked with a slight grin as it began to sink in for him that Mina hadn't just tanked her early hero career for him. 3, if you were so inclined. Ida informed him with a raised eyebrow of his own. Tensei told me to inform you there is room at the agency for the both of us, if you want it. Like we always talked about, huh? Kurai mused as he remembered the days of their childhood gone by. In spite of the sudden rush of nostalgia, he already knew his answer. That is a very tempting offer, but I think it'd be better for Eri and I to stick with Gran Torino for the time being. Ida nodded quickly, as if he had expected the answer before he told him, I understand. The 2 of you need the best training you can get to master One for All before the war begins. Your known agency affiliations can wait until after we make sure Eri's future does not come to pass. Bingo. His friend grinned as he moved to fit the new hose into its proper placing. If I can't get in with Gang Orca again when sophomore year kicks in, I'll definitely take Tensei up on his offer. I'm sure he'll be flattered to hear you say so, Ida said with a roll of his eyes. Oh, please, it's not like he doesn't know my top pick. The 2 of them shared in a quiet chuckle before Kurai leaned back to look at his friend and add, Thanks for looking out for Mina like that. It means a lot to me. I know what she means to you, the other boy said with a continued smile. Whatever is important to you is also important to me. Also, as her class representative, it is my duty to do what I can in order to help her succeed as a hero. So it's got to come back to you just doing your job, doesn't it? The resurrected boy snickered, prompting another small laugh from his friend. Whatever your motivations are, you have my thanks. You are welcome, Kurai. Your design is asinine. No, it's beautiful in its intricacy. No, it's an overly complicated disaster waiting to happen. Akudori jabbed a stiff finger at the schematics that Hatsume had just unrolled on her desk on the support lab, while going on to say, If you think that's going to hold up to a charge of even 1 million volts, forget a potential teravolt, you're just asking to set your workbench on fire. I've reinforced the circuit with hydrate dampeners, she argued back as she smacked his hand away. That'll keep the excess electricity from affecting the rest of the system. No, it's going to give you a suit that functions at less than half of its potential. With a series of brisk, angry movements, Akudori yanked out one of the textbooks from a pile at the girl's desk and immediately started searching for the back half of the book until he found what he was looking for. Here! Giving the book a shove that knocked it into Hatsume's hip, he muttered, If you're going the intracranial route, your conduits need to be made with gallium, not... Whatever whatever this mess is. So saying, he made a disgusted gesture at the proposed schematics, which led Hatsume to scowl back at him. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt whatever you've got going on, but when can I expect my costumes repairs to be butt out? Hatsume and Akudori shouted at a startled Kaminari, who recoiled from the force of their volume. All right, sheesh, he grumbled as he made a point of distancing himself from the squabbling pair. Man, I thought flirting was only supposed to be high risk for the two people going at it, not the sideliners. Ow! Hey! I don't know which of Mina's idiotic movies put that idea in that puerile head of yours, but kill it before I do it for you! Akudori demanded as he reached for another one of Hatsume's lightweight failed projects. You couldn't get me to go on a date with this girl even if it got me a chance to intern with Dr. Banner! Yeah, I wouldn't go on a date with this kid to cure cancer! Hatsume added, which got both boys to look at her incredulously. Damn, man, I think Todoroki's gonna have to treat you for that burn, Kaminari said with something like sympathy. You would... Not even to cure cancer! Akudori demanded, Kaminari already forgotten. You do know what that is, right? Yeah, a disease caused by an uncontrollable division of abnormal cells in parts of the body. Hatsume shot back, looking at the younger boy like he'd lost his mind. Weren't you supposed to be a doctor or something? Shouldn't you know that? I'm not a... Wait, you're a techie. Why do you know that so fast? Because I read up on how early hero costumes had a tendency to generate iridium, which led to an almost mass breakout of cancer in the first generation of Middle East heroes. She responded while maintaining her own look of incredulity. Duh. Did you just... Hey, Pipsqueak. A familiar, drawling voice cut off Akudori before he could really tear into Hatsume, leading the boy to look over to the exit and see Crow leaning against the doorframe, looking as though he'd been used as a pit bull's chew toy. Nezu and I gotta talk to you. Now. You need to go see Recovery Girl, Akudori said once he managed to shake himself free of his surprise at seeing the man so disheveled. What the hell happened to you? That's part of what we need to talk about. The man grunted as he heaved himself away from the wall, leaving a couple of bloodstains on the frame as he did, which Kaminari cringed at. Come on, I'll fill you in once we get to the mouse's office. I'm not... Ah! Akudori swung a glare toward Hatsume and grumbled, have someone from the faculty clean up this guy's mess, yeah. I'm gonna go make sure he doesn't die of blood loss on the way to the principal's office. Fine, but I'm gonna start drawing up the specs for those skin graft circuits we were discussing during lunch while you're out. No, you will not! If I let you do that, it'll be, hey kid, stop making out with your girlfriend already. Crow called from up the hall. You two sound like my brother-in-law and my sister. She's not my... Oh, forget it! Akudori snarled as he grabbed a first aid kit from the appropriate station and ran after the older man. Seriously, just because my brother's into the pink hair doesn't mean it's the same with that grease monkey back there. No one cares what you think, Short Stack. I hope one of those cuts gets infected with gangrene. As the arguing voices receded up the hall, Kaminari took the moment to turn toward Hatsume and ask, So, about my targeting system repair, why settle for a quick fix when we could do so much more? She grinned excitedly as a dangerous gleam entered her eyes. I've got so many babies that we can try for you. Ah, crap, I was afraid of this. Will you just sit still and let me bandage this? Akudori demanded as he tried to pull Crow back into the chair that he had briefly occupied in Nezu's office. Also in said room was the animal himself, Taiyang, All Might, and Detective Tsukuuchi. Don't worry about it. Doesn't even hurt anymore, the hero said breezily. That's because you're drunk, Crow, Taiyang grumbled before he snatched his brother-in-law's flask away from his hip. Let the kid do his job so you can tell us why you look like junior year internships all over again. You swore you'd never bring that up again. And you swore you'd stop drinking on the job, but here we are. Gentlemen, please, Nezu interjected before any real arguing could begin. Crow, I notice that you have not elected to visit Recovery Girl so that she can heal you, which is your choice, of course. All the same, I don't much like bloodstains on my carpet, so I would take it as a personal favor if you were to get back in the chair and let Hikari exercise his medical license while you give us a summary of what happened throughout the course of your investigation. Fine, if it makes His Majesty happy. Crow grumbled before he sank back into the chair and propped his leg up on a coffee table, which the others would have called rude if Akudori didn't immediately move to inspect a pair of slash marks that ran down the inside of his calf. Did you get into a fight with a tiger? The boy asked as he shook his head with something like disapproval. Not this time. Crow grinned in a way that told Akudori he probably did not want to know the rest of that particular story. This week's trip got me enough fighting to last me the next 10 years. Something your students are going to be saying come spring. The adults and Akudori shared a worried look before All Might was the one to ask, What did you find in Dika City? A wasteland, Crow replied with a shake of his head. There's nothing there that's worth rebuilding after the League and the Meta Liberation Army went at it. Were you able to ascertain whether or not the two parties have joined forces as they did in Miss Aries' future? Nezu inquired. Following the narrative given to them by their ally from the times yet to come, he had asked Crow to investigate the area where she claimed the League and Meta Liberation Army had first joined forces. This was mostly in aid of trying to determine how much Ares' actions had affected the present, but the little animal also knew that it wouldn't hurt for them to have some first-hand intelligence for themselves. Looks that way. The gruff hero nodded, his tone becoming more sober as he did. According to the crowd that I managed to work my way into, Shigaraki's goons put up a pretty good fight, but the man himself was responsible for the entire city turning into dust. Even if he wasn't about to get his hands on All for One, he's more dangerous than we ever would have expected without an advance warning. What is the organization doing now? Tsukuuchi asked as he folded his hands in front of him. Were you able to gain enough information to help us organize a preemptive strike? You're gonna want to listen to the whole story before I answer that, Detective, Crow drawled. Turns out this paranormal liberation front is the only thing the UA isn't the only thing the UA guys are gonna have to bone to pick with. Pausing briefly while Akadori started treating his wounds with disinfectants, he then grunted out, The front won't be making any hostile moves until Shigaraki's up and about. That I know. They know that Kai could tear most of them apart with his bare hands after they all saw what he did in Kanto. And most of them aren't exactly the kind who are determined to die for their cause. They want to reshape society, but they'd like to be alive to see it happen. They know their best bet for countering Kai, and anyone else like him is to have Shigaraki ready to fight. Don't they already have pro-heroes in their ranks? Akadori asked as he started to bind the leg wounds that he had dressed. They have to know there are laws that prevent heroes from engaging in mass slaughter like the ones they seem to be expecting. Them being afraid of my brother on that scale when they have 100,000 fighters on their side does not make any sense. Kurai's stupid powerful, yeah, but he'd hold back against even that number until he was backed into a corner. I'm not so sure. Crow muttered, holding his hands up in a surrendering gesture when Akadori glared at him. Hey, simmer down. I'm not saying that to imply your brother's trigger happy. Like I said, there's more going on than just with the front. Turning to the teachers in the room, he then added, You guys better brace yourselves because you're really going to hate the last piece of intel that I managed to get a hold of before I had to scram. Will you stop beating around the bush and just tell us what's happening? Tai Yang growled impatiently. Easy, Tai. Crow replied in a warning tone that actually managed to take the other man aback for a moment. You're not going to like this either. What's worse than Tomura Shigaraki becoming powerful enough to level a city before getting a hold of his master's quirk? All Might wondered aloud, his face pensive. The front has a few political players among their numbers, so I decided to try and pursue some leads on that end, Crow answered. I figured the more key figures we could take down before they make their move, the better for our side, right? Destabilizing their chain of command is an expedient move, given our limited resources and the fact that if we told anyone in the government about this, they'd think we were crazy people. Akadori commented as he moved to inspect what appeared to be a stab wound in Crow's left arm, which had been roughly bound something like 2 days beforehand. I wouldn't be worried about their opinion of you anymore. Crow grunted as the boy started to undress the old bandage. Come again? Did it occur to any of you how weird it was that your country deployed so many heroes around the world in response to the Humorized attack in Kanto? Crow asked in response. When no one answered him immediately, he went on to say, You guys have a lot of good heroes, sure, but a lot of the countries that you were deployed to also have solid hero population. I can understand sending aid to places like Otheon or Taiwan, but you had Hawks out in America and Ryukyu somewhere in Europe? Where was the sense in that, especially considering when your agencies were supposed to be doubling down on finding the local Humorized cells after the bombing? I pointed that out to one of the Alliance agents who was coordinating between me and a few other scientists, but I pretty much got told to shut up and keep working on anti-trigger compound, Akadori muttered. Seemed to me like the heroes were leaving our country light on defenses and manpower. I mean, look what happened in Tokyo. The place was still a madhouse even almost a full day after the bombs had been confirmed as deactivated. Evidently, there's a reason for that, Crow said before he pulled what looked like a flash drive out of his pocket. This is why I got jumped. Not by the front or any 2-bit criminals either. Wait, what? Tai Yang asked, looking even more worried now. Crow, what did you get into? Some shady-looking heroes who hang around one of the Heroes Public Safety Commission leaders caught me retrieving the data on this drive. The other American answered with a shrug as Akadori took the device from him with a curious look in his eye. I planted a bug in the offices of 3 of those guys after I realized the Meta Liberation Army had supporters pretty high up the chain. Good thing, too. You spied on the Safety Commission? Tsukuuchi sputtered. You didn't have a warrant for that, nor were you given permission by a government official of any sort. I should be arresting you right now! Good luck with that, Crow snickered, causing Tai Yang to introduce his palm to his face. It's not funny, Crow. It's kind of funny. What about this is humorous? All Might demanded with a bit of anger. They're referring to Mr. Branwen's quirk, if I'm not mistaken. Akadori interrupted before the adults could start a shouting match. For once, this got even Crow to shut up and look at the boy with surprised eyes, which led Akadori to raising an eyebrow and setting aside the flash drive as he said, correct me if I'm wrong, but your quirk negatively affects the quantum entanglements of those in the close to mid-range vicinity, right? Huh. When Crow refused to give a real answer, Tsukuchi and All Might looked to Nezu for answers, who sighed with no small amount of exasperation. He's essentially saying that Mr. Branwen's quirk brings bad luck to people who are around him, he explained. I had suspected as much myself, but his reaction seems to confirm it. How the hell did you figure that out, kid? Tai Yang asked as Akadori went back to cleaning Crow's wounds, who was now wearing a stony mask of silence. No one outside our old hero team and Professor Ozpin know what his quirk does. Because I'm smarter than pretty much everybody in this country except for maybe him, Akadori answered as he jerked a thumb over his shoulder to indicate the principal. Your inside jokes about luck being were a big clue, but I mostly drew the conclusion from your explanations concerning his high-profile targets in the past, as well as his tendency to not spend much time around his family, despite the fact that he clearly cares for you guys. What do his previous targets have to do with you figuring out his quirk? Tai Yang asked, still looking baffled. Simply that none of the apparent slip-ups that led up to their arrests and public ridicule made any kind of sense, the boy replied with another shrug. I researched all of them, trying to figure out how Crow was taking them down each time, but the only link between him and they seemed to be a series of incidents involving plain bad luck. When do you even have time to read up on, in any case, how he found is not nearly as important as what he found, Akadori said to interrupt Tai Yang. I doubt Mr. Branwen is the type to abandon a mission midway, even if his cover was blown. Give me a minute to finish making sure he won't die of blood loss, and we'll see what's on that drive. In the meantime, I think we'd all appreciate a sneak preview of what we're going to find on said drive. So saying, he gave Crow a meaningful look, who stirred uncomfortably in his seat. The Safety Commission is under the control of a new player, he muttered, seemingly dejected. They're not with the government, and as far as I can tell, they're not a member of either the League or the Meta-Liberation Movement, that they seem to have similar anarchistic ideals. You mean there's another faction out there who's about to start gunning for us? Tai Yang yelped. Not a faction, his comrade corrected him quickly. I'm pretty sure this is one person, either acting alone or with very minimal help that probably doesn't even realize who they're working for. One person has the Safety Commission under their thumb, Akadori asked dubiously. Setting aside the absurdity of that idea for a moment, there's no way this person is working alone. One person couldn't maneuver a group of people that influential on their own. You sure about that, Short Stack? Crow asked with a raised eyebrow of his own. In response, Akadori gave him another flat look before he yanked on one of the bindings he had been setting up, causing his patient to let out a short bark of pain. If it was one person, they'd have to be at least half as smart as me, the boy said as he finished tying the bandage in place. No one in Japan other than Nezu and I is old enough and has a quirk that makes them smart enough to pull off what Mr. Branwen is talking about. Trust me on that. What makes you so confident about that? All Might asked him with a frown. I like to keep an eye out for potential competition through talent shows and local news articles. Akadori replied with a slight grin. There are a few kids out there who show potential, but no one with the resources or maturity to browbeat higher-ups like the HPSC. Says the only kid in the room, Tsukuchi muttered. Yes, says the only kid in the country, probably the world, who is smart enough to design a neck brace that interfaces with a person's neural system and then use programmable matter to rewrite said pathways so that the use of their quirk doesn't overwork their frontal cortex to the point of death by cerebral hemorrhaging, Akadori countered. So we've heard, All Might sighed. Several times. Look, I'm smart. I'm not ashamed of that fact, the boy grumbled as he stepped away from Crow, having treated most of his wounds by now. I will also not apologize for being as confident in my abilities as my brother has become with his. If anything, my confidence should be more warranted, seeing as I was born with and have used it effectively throughout my entire life. Your brother wields the power of 10 heroes, and has their collective experience guiding him in his path, Nezu pointed out. Your quirk is very impressive, no one can doubt that. However, I would caution you from assuming that it grants you a victory simply because you have the ambition to use it, and have not conceded a loss to anyone in the same field as you. Whoa. You think that I'm just assumed that I'm going to win any fight that I pick? Akadori demanded, looking insulted. Come on, I'm not that arrogant. Ares telling me the future was enough to tell me that. My plan didn't succeed during that last battle, remember? Of course, I know I'm not enough to win the fight. I do, however, know that there is no one smarter than me, not only because of my own findings, but because Akadori admitted to my future self that it was because he had multiple enhancement quirks working in his mind that he was even able to stand on equal footing with me when it comes to intelligence. The others in the room all exchanged what could be almost called uncomfortable looks at this statement. Strictly speaking, Shigaraki had not been comparing their respective IQs when he had confronted Akadori in the future, but he had certainly alluded to that much. Not to mention that Eri had told him about his habit of taking quirks that only served to make him smarter in his bid for world domination. Nothing that Akadori had said was incorrect, which was making it more frustrating for them as they tried to come up with counterpoints that might help curb what was going to be a potential ego problem. Ignoring these looks, Akadori then grabbed up the flash drive that Crow had brought back and strode toward his laptop, which was sitting opposite to his patient. All right, we've wasted enough time on arguing. Let's see what our little birdie has to say, he said as he booted up the device and slid the drive into the appropriate slot. Hey, I still haven't decided whether or not I'm cuffing Branwyn. Tsukuchi tried to protest, but he was instantly waved off by Akadori. If you were going to arrest him, you'd have already tried to do it by now, the boy said as he went to open the files on the now active drive. The only real issue will be is if this guy tries to press charges, in which case you might want to hop on the next plane out of Japan. He directed the last words to Crow, who was already shaking his head in the negative. I kind of doubt that's going to be a problem, he said, which drew everyone's attention back to him. Kind of hard to press charges against somebody when you're dead. Wait, dead? Did you kill the guy? All Might demanded. No, Crow snapped, looking irritated. Though the guys who chased me off this morning probably think that I did. Just have a listen to the files on that drive and then you'll see why else I had to hightail it back here as soon as I could. Is there one in particular you want me to play first? Akadori asked, having noticed that the files were all labeled by timestamp. I'm gonna assume it'll also explain the dead guy that'll undoubtedly making tonight's news. The last one is the one you'll really need to hear, but the rest should be good for evidence should we decide to use it, the grizzled hero answered. I almost didn't get these because I was so busy listening to the file while it downloaded that I didn't notice I'd been discovered by this guy's security. Also, I doubt the guy's death is going to be made public anytime soon. Your quirk can backfire on you, huh? Akadori asked curiously, causing Crow's face to fall flat again. Bummer. I know how that goes. I thought you already knew everything, Pipsqueak. I don't know everything, the boy snorted as he scrolled through the list of his data. But I can accurately surmise most of the things that I don't know. Here's the file. He hit a button and the room fell silent as voices began to play from the computer. Everything is in place, said a man's voice. That's Yuto Hisaki, Tsukuchi said with a frown, having recognized the voice. Akadori paused the audio long enough for him to add, Never would have suspected of him being a sellout. Why's that? Taiyang asked curiously. He's always been one of the people on the commission who encouraged a firmer hand from the heroes at large, the detective explained. Him siding with an anarchist is from very far out of left field. I wouldn't exactly use the word siding with here, Crow deadpanned. Keep playing the audio, kid. Another push of the button led to Hisaki's voice saying, The proposition went through just as you said it would. I take it you had an active hand in the majority vote that occurred.
That would be telling.
And I only tell you what you need to know. The second voice that came through had clearly been put through a synthesizer that made it barely understandable. The pitch of the voice and intonations of each word also changed rapidly, making it impossible to tell anything about the speaker on the other end.
All you need to know for now is that your deep, dark wish is about to come to light.
I never dreamed of turning children into human weapons, Hisaki snapped, which made everyone in Nezu's office but Crow stiffen with alarm. The adults should know better than to think that war will be anything less than a hideous business, but the next generation should not have to atone for our ineptitude. Now that the order has been met with a majority of vote in favor of its passing, the word will be out within the week, and then we're going to have the new Geneva Convention breathing down our necks!
As you said,
War is an ugly business.
The other speaker seemed to chuckle.
the coming battle is a result of the society you and other safety commission members have been hoping to construct. Now, because of your lies and manipulations, not only will you watch that thin veneer of supposed safety crumble to pieces,
We'll also watch his children
ask to fight battles for you. But it is only fair. When war is declared, soldiers all are expected to follow orders. No.
What the hell are these two talking about? Taiyang asked Crow, even as Akadori paused the audio again. To save us some time, I'll say that in some of the earlier files, you'll find discussions between this person and other members of the board concerning a directive that would label the Meta Liberation Army as a hostile terrorist group. The man answered heavily. In that same directive, it was proposed that all heroes would be given the authority to deal with any member of their organization as they would an invader from another country. That's the vote they were just discussing now, the one that passed into effect. An invader. Akadori repeated, his face going pale. You don't mean... In the event of an invasion with another nation, heroes are expected to serve as an elite soldier, all with the same mission as the armed forces they fight alongside, All Might said shakily. Driving out the invaders with any means that they have at their personal disposal, Nezu whispered. In other words, they would be authorized, almost expected to, use their quirks to wipe out the hostile force threatening Japan. In this case, the Meta Army. Crow nodded grimly. The HPSC has officially decided to give every hero in your country the authority to decide whether or not their enemies live or die when they come to fight. Whoa. Taiyang said as he held up his hands with a nervous grin. I understand you all getting nervous about this, but how does that translate into child soldiers? In the event of an emergency, heroes with provisional licenses are expected to respond to the presented situation, even if there are no official pros to give them orders. Akadori said hoarsely, his face nearly as white as his brother's hair. In this scenario, if students have their provisional licenses, they will be expected to fight alongside the pros in the battle with the Liberation Front. All Might finished for him, even as his face tightened with anger. They expect our students to play the part of soldiers who must kill or be killed on their behalf. In a flash of rage, his body swelled up to its formerly heroic shape. I'll have words for these false-faced pretenders! In a burst of smoke, he deflated again, but the look of unadulterated rage remained. Oh, no way, forget that! Taiyang said angrily as he turned on Nezu. Sir, with all due respect, if this is true, I'm going to have to take my daughters and their friends home with us immediately. I'm sorry this is happening, but I will not have them participating in a mass butchering. Butchering? Crow repeated calmly. I think you're underestimating our enemy's capabilities. It's not like they don't have pro heroes in their ranks who will put up a fight. Forget the League of Villains' core members. I'm more worried about our side being able to survive an army of over 100,000 strong. Most of those guys are idealists who don't know what it means to be in a battle, Taiyang shouted angrily as he rounded on the other man. They'll come at the heroes with their heads held high because they think they'll win because of their righteousness or whatever crap they're spouting. What they're going to get is a bloodbath because all the people on our side are also going to believe that they're doing the right thing, except they'll be much better trained and equipped for battle. Our kids will end up with blood on their hands, and I don't want that for them. They already have blood on their hands. The quiet words from Akadori stopped Taiyang in place. Not wanting to give the man a chance to recover his verbal footing, the boy went on to remind him, Team Ruby killed the Chimera villain on Nabu Island, remember? My brother also killed their leader when he had to. You trying to justify this? No! The boy snarled as he shot to his feet, surprising the adults with a fire in his voice. I'm not saying this is okay. None of this is. Need I remind you that I already lost Kurai once to this kind of violence? You think I want to risk that happening again? But you don't see me standing there and acting like my brother's class is something fragile to be protected. They aren't little kids who can't stand for themselves. You think you're the only one who's lost something to heroism and villains? Taiyang shot back. Let me give you some advice, kiddo. When you've had years to understand what that loss does to the people who are left behind, then maybe you'll understand why there's no way in hell that I'm going to let my daughters take part in a war where people are guaranteed to die. Enough, Tai, Crow shouted as he also got to his feet. Everyone in this room is obviously going to do what they can to fight this. Try not to forget that Ruby and Yang aren't the only kids at stake in all this. It's not even everyone in UA that we need to worry about. There's a whole country full of kids who are going to be affected by this if we don't all keep our heads on straight. I understand your concerns, Nezu said in his ever-calm tone as he regarded the two men from behind his desk. If you believe that it is for the best that your country's students have no part in what is to come, I will not stop you from taking them home. Thank you, Taiyang said as he turned away from the others with a huff. I'll tell them that before you go, however, the little animal interrupted. I would ask that perhaps you consider the feelings of your daughters and their classmates. What the hell does that mean? As Mr. Branwyn has said, we here will do everything in our power to have this fate turned away from our students, Nezu explained. There is every chance that we will fail, and I know this. The issue you may find is in telling your charges that you will be taking them home to safety, while the friends they have come to know and love here are being left to their own devices. How do you think they will react to that? I don't care, Taiyang said stubbornly. I'm sorry, I really am, sir. But the safety of your students are not my priority. I came here to help Second Amendment students and keep them safe, and that's what I'm going to do. Good luck convincing Ruby and Yang with that argument. Crow snorted, causing his partner to glare at him again. I don't have to argue, he snapped. I'm their father and the acting guardian for the other members of their teams. If I say we need to go, we need to go. They can't escape this aspect of our jobs forever, Tai. Sooner or later, they're all going to end up in a kill or be killed situation again. And then what will they do? Run away so that someone else can die for them? After what they watched my brother do for them, there's no way they step aside so that someone else can take the hit in their place, Akadori said with a negative shake of his head. Gentlemen, if I may, I would suggest that we finish listening to the recording as so we may continue our arguments more fully informed of what is going on. Nezu interrupted again. It was difficult to discern his expressions sometimes, due to his animalistic features, but Akadori thought that he looked a little desperate. Clearly none of us are open to changing our minds at the present moment, so I suggest we alter the variables of this discussion. Nothing in that file is going to change my mind on this, but fine. Taiyang spat as he stepped away from Crow, who sank back into his chair. I'm not interested in arguing anyway. When it became clear that everyone was going to wait without further quarrel for the moment, Akadori nodded and pressed play on his keyboard again. Is this all some kind of game to you? Hisaki was now saying.
No. If this was a game, I would be having fun,
said the other voice.
I'm simply going to be providing a public service with this act of yours as it were.
And what would that be?
Illumination.
There was a brief pause before the garbled voice added,
For years, you and yours have watched proudly from your ivory towers as your fragile peace flourished at the expense of those who held their doubts. You have this whole society thinking they're safe in this light that you constructed out of shadows. But with this, they will finally know who the real monsters are. The kinds of things you've done without even looking cure. Of course, now that someone has come along to improve upon your ideas.
We never push for mass murder by endangering the innocent, you sycophant! Hisaki raged.
I think Lady Nagant might have something to say to that.
The other speaker retorted, which silenced the man immediately.
How many villains did you have her slaughter when you decided it was simply easier for them to disappear? How many heroes who took things just a shade too far for the public to approve of it? Did you have her silenced in spite of her reservations? How many lives have to be extinguished in the name of a single goal before it's considered mass murder?
Lady Nagant was a mistake, Hisaki admitted. By the time some of us realized what we were having her do was as despicable as the acts we condemned others for, we were all in too deep. But the people out there, the children aspiring to become heroes to all, they don't deserve to share in her hell. Pause. Akadori clicked the appropriate button and looked up to Taiyang, who then asked, Who's this Lady Nagant person? She was a pro-hero who was imprisoned after being convicted of murdering another hero during an argument. Sukuichi answered, looking shaken. She was pretty popular, well-liked and admired by many, especially the younger crowd. Her arrest and condemnation were pretty shocking when they happened. No one had seen it coming. Sounds like there was more to it than a hero with a sniper rifle for an arm having a bad day, All Might muttered. Seems like the HPSC had a hitman who couldn't stop questioning the validity of their targets. Now she's in Tartarus. That's correct, the detective nodded. Perfect place to muzzle somebody you don't want to execute outright, Akadori pointed out, to which Nezu and All Might had to agree on. No one's ever escaped, and the people in there hardly get visitation privileges. If you're even suspected of having committed a crime, you're not getting within 10 miles of the place. No security leaks there for sure. Even if she tried to protest her innocence and get out on an appeal by agreeing to turn testimony against her superiors, there's no one who's going to listen to her in there. Geez, how many people are these guys planning to screw over to keep up their public image? Taiyang demanded of no one in particular. Maybe we'll find out if we keep listening, Akadori said before he hit the play button again.
Sticks and stones, Harlan.
The mysterious voice was now saying.
It's easy to apologize when someone else points out your wrongdoings, isn't it? I sincerely doubt you would have come to this conclusion on your own.
What else do you want from me? Hisaki growled, apparently attempting to change the subject. You've got everything in place for this war, after which, of course, no one is ever going to trust us again. Even if the heroes do win against the Meta Liberation Army that's massing, society will have plunged into chaos during the aftermath.
I have what I want, London.
The other speaker answered.
I wanted the people of this country to know the truth about their so-called champions, and now they will. What they do with that knowledge is up to them.
Our business is hereby concluded. Then this is the part where you kill me, I suppose, Hisaki scoffed. This whole time you've promised the safety of my wife and daughter, but you never said anything about me surviving. I'm not as stupid as you seem to think I am. My family's somewhere you'll never find them by now, so forget about trying to get any last-minute leverage over on me. I don't care enough about my own life to do your dirty work anymore, so you have nothing left that you can use against me. There was an ugly silence that lasted long enough for those who were not looking at the computer screen to wonder if the file had just stopped there, but then the other speaker said,
You think very highly of yourself as a family man, don't you? You would do anything to keep them safe, wouldn't you? Even say smuggling them out of the country on the boat you built with your big son during his teenage years. The one you never registered.
How did you... Wait. No. No, don't do this! Hisaki started to beg as he seemed to react to something they could not see. They haven't done anything to you! All Might and Tsukuchi covered their faces while Akudori shut his eyes. Nezu's ears flattened back against his head as Taiyang turned to Crow with a look of mute horror, though the other man refused to even look at him.
Neither of you. But only you have outlived your usefulness.
The other voice now said.
Consider this as your punishment for trying to outsmart me.
There was a sound of an explosion coming through a TV screen, followed by a scream of agony, then a much more visceral explosion that definitely did not originate from outside the man's office. After another few seconds of silence, Akudori managed to whisper, That's the end of the file. Crap on a stick, Crow! Taiyang shouted as he rounded on his partner again. You couldn't have warned us that was coming? There's a kid in the room! I told you guys to brace yourselves at the start of this meeting. For the record, I've heard much more gruesome stories from police officers, but yeah, a little more specific heads up next time would be appreciated. Akudori said as he closed the file, his hands shaking slightly as he did. Is there anything else in particular that we should be looking for from this data, or...
Hello? You ain't friends?
Mother Shenron! Akudori yelped while practically leaping away from his spot on the couch as a familiar voice came from his computer. Both the voice and his reaction caused the adults in the room to tense up and look at the device with no small amount of fear. Is that the guy from the... Yep. Crow interrupted Tsukuchi as they began to encircle the computer while Akudori looked at it with wide eyes. This isn't a recording? Nope.
I was hoping to have a chance to speak with some of you.
The voice told them.
You in particular.
He cut it. At the sound of his name, the boy flinched anew, which led to Nezu approaching the computer while asking, Who are you? And for how long have you been listening in on us?
Not long, don't you worry.
The voice laughed.
Only since one of you plugged in your agent's recorded data, which contained a bug of my own that has allowed me to access this computer's audio system. As for who I am, we may get to that in due time.
You blackmailed and then killed Yuto Hisaki, Tsukuchi said angrily. Why? What do you stand to gain from all of this?
That would be telling, detective.
The voice replied in what seemed to be a patronizing tone. The filter still made it difficult to discern what emotion they were conveying from moment to moment.
Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak with the people who can hold a conversation with me on somewhat equal footing.
What is it that you consider to be of equal footing? All Might demanded.
If you had to ask that question, consider yourself beneath me.
The voice answered.
This is a different arena than one you are used to, O exalted symbol of peace. Perhaps your dear old friend, Naida, could have helped you, though we can all see that he failed to maintain good sense when it came to more crucial moments. Really. Taking on Kai Chisaki. With a clairvoyance quirk that could only activate in proximity to an opponent? For someone who bragged about how important it is to prepare for all possible contingencies, he didn't seem to have very good understanding of the simple concept of irony.
Oh, shit. Akudori muttered as he slowly started to sink back into the couch while All Might reddened with fury. I think I know what he means by equal footing. This is a very serious problem. Nezu nodded as if in agreement, while everyone else looked at one another with confusion, even Crow. Someone want to clue in the rest of us? the slightly tipsy man demanded. Think about it, Kurai replied as he sat down squarely in front of the computer and began to work on something the others could not see. What do Nezu and I have in common that the rest of you don't? It took less than a second for Sukuuchi to answer. You both have intelligence quirks. Oh, damn. What? Taeyang asked. Whoever this guy is, he has an intelligence quirk, Sukuuchi explained. Like Hikari and Nezu. How is that possible? Crow now demanded as he scowled at Akurui. Didn't we just sit through a lecture about how he's the smartest person to ever live, and there's no one out there like him, except for the mouse? I am not a mouse, Nezu said without looking up while he watched the boy work at a furious pace. But he does raise a good point. Whoever this person is, they've fallen outside of Hikari's search parameters.
Fallen outside?
The voice replied, possibly in an incredulous, or perhaps still amused, manner.
I don't know. I am precisely where I want to be.
He's saying that he erased himself from everything. Akurui answered before anyone could ask him what the intruder meant. We won't find any record of his existence on the internet or government listings. He'll have been as thorough as possible. Why is that? All Might inquired. Because if I were to overthrow the current government, like this guy seems to be doing, first thing I would do would be to erase my tracks, starting from the beginning, Akurui muttered. But if even I can't find out anything about who he was, I can still work something out about who he is.
Not a bad guess, but you're wrong about my goals,
the intruder replied.
I'm not an anarchist. I know well that society without structure is nothing but chaos where no one can achieve their full potential. It can only endure. For people to truly have the opportunity to thrive, there can be no room for a government that eats its own champion or maintain the lie that they do. They do for the greater good. No one is protected from harm through falsehoods. The damage is there whether the afflicted realize it or not. By the way, if you're trying to piggyback my signal to trace my location, I'll be having you looking down that rabbit trail for the next decade before you have a clue to where I am.
Yep, still worth a shot, Akurui grumbled before Nezu stepped in with an inquisitive look on his face. Seeing this, the boy scooted aside and said, Please, have at it. Thank you.
You won't catch me,
the intruder told them. Do you have any idea how many villains have said that to me over the years right before I caught them? All Might shot back.
You're not exactly capable of moving at the speed of sound anymore, All Might,
their antagonist retorted. You've also never revealed yourself before either. Akurui shot back over Nezu's shoulder. You're obviously not new at this. You couldn't have set up a method to take down the Heroes Public Safety Commission overnight. If you've been smart enough to avoid being caught this whole time, you'd know the best tool in your line of work is to never even let people know that you exist. Why reveal yourself now?
And
the voice replied slowly, dragging out the word like it was being introduced to a secondary language learner. You're bored, Akurui said in disbelief.
I'm sure you and Nezu can sympathize,
they answered.
You too know what it's like to grow up in a world that just can't keep up with you.
And what, you think that we can?
I think that I've got a bone to pick with your brother, Hikari.
The voice answered, static riddling it just enough to distort the anger that was now bleeding into their tone.
And I think that I'm going to take it out on you!
This made Nezu pause for a split second before he resumed working and asking, What makes you think that we'll allow you to harm him or his brother?
Because you can't stop me,
the voice replied ominously.
I'm curious to see how hard you will struggle and rage against the inevitable, but I know that you won't be able to stop me. Normally when I operate, no one knows it's me tugging at the strings, so I rarely get to see the moment of comprehension, when it dawns on my enemies that they were doomed from the beginning to fail.
Don't you worry though, I'm not going to harm Akurui here directly.
Not yet anyway.
Then what are you going to do to me? The boy snorted. And you're wrong, whoever you are. You're not as smart as you think you are. I'll find you, and when I do, Kurai's going to be the one to bring you in.
I'm not wrong. I am not smart, and I'm going to make you suffer by rendering your intellect useless.
Their new enemy replied in kind.
In the coming days, you will say
Nothing to anyone outside of Hikari's
class about what you've heard in regard to the upcoming changes to the Heroes Code.
Where the deaths of the Hero Safety Commission members and their families will be on your head.
And we're supposed to believe that you'll follow through with that promise after what we just heard in that recording? Taeyang demanded. Those people are dead anyway.
I thought you might say something along those lines.
their antagonist replied.
This is how certain I am that you will do everything in your power to not let this family be blown to pieces. If you do switch to the authorities or take any of the American students off the game board, the bombs I've planted will go off. And when they do, the molecular composition of all the devices, when arranged in the correct order, will spell out my name. Now you have a choice to make, heroes. Tell people the truth about the changes that are coming and obtain the mastermind behind all of this. But also live with the fact that you've killed over 24 people to do so. Remember to bear that in mind if your friends from the States run away. I will also make good on my threat.
Why them? Taiyang demanded furiously. Why should we be made to play your sick game?
Because as I said, I want Kurai to suffer.
Their opponent said softly.
When the war comes, his friends will have what they imagine to be needless bloodshed on their hands, and it will eat away at them. In turn, it will cause the Guardian Hero to agonize over the fact that even with all of his amazing powers,
He will be unable to protect that which he loves.
this only delays him, because no matter what you
Tell him he will be of the opinion that they never needed to get involved in this country's war.
I thought you said we couldn't tell anybody about this, Sukuichi cut in. Contradicting yourself a little, aren't you?
Please, I know full well that each of you is a sad side. It's to all justification, an affirmation from someone you love that you've done the right thing. Or whatever junk you want to call it. I told you, I like Hikari's suffering and his classmates having to bear this oh-so-terrible burden
Within his line of sight will all weigh the heavier on his
fragile conscience. Don't you think?
Holding hostages. Akuru interrupted before anyone else could get a word in. Very blasé of you. Here I was thinking you'd be more creative in achieving your goals now that your first method has been exposed.
Napoleon Bonaparte may have believed in variety as an assured method of victory, but I think even the dullards in your company remember how well that turned out in the end.
The voice replied simply.
If a method of execution is an assured success, why should I alter it?
Until a fact that can result in a failure is found in my methods, I think I would do right to be continuing on as I am.
Really? Akuru snorted again, even as Nezu continued to work at the computer. Because I could think of one glaring flaw in your plan.
Don't insult me by saying that I never should reveal myself to you.
The voice replied instantly.
You are the one who's overestimated your intellect, Hikari.
Not I.
No, you made your mistake by threatening my brother. Akuru answered as a strange gleam appeared in his eye. I'm sure you know that he's one of the only things that I have left in this world that I consider precious. You've threatened his well-being, and that never ends well for you. That never ends well for his antagonists. Even if you manage to beat me at whatever game you're planning, which you won't, you will never escape him, especially with the crew that he's got backing him. You had to step out of the shadows with this little stunt of yours, and the two of us rise with the sun. You're entering our territory, and it's not a mistake that you will get to correct.
You rise with the sun,
The voice mused.
and as you rise, the shadows are to be vanquished.
Your intellect is truly astonishing, whoever you are.
Where are my manners?
The voice replied with a laugh that was clear enough to come through so that nobody could doubt they were still being mocked.
Well, as I said, you'll never find me. But I'm sure you want something to call me now that you know I exist going forward.
As a reminder that no land is ever without a shadow, no matter how brightly the sun shines.
I suppose you should call me Umbra.
Got it. Nezu said as he removed the flash drive the crow had brought back, even as Akuri let out a sigh of relief.
If you're trying to make me panic, this is a
Sad attempt.
Umbra told them.
I know you don't know where I am.
No, but we already found your first weakness. Akuri grinned before flipping the bird at the camera that he was sure was being used to watch them. You talk too much.
You're already trying to scramble my voice to figure out my true identity.
Their enemy summarized, which got Akuru to freeze in place with an uncertain look on his face.
It's not a bad idea, really.
Were I just another villain? Allow me to flex a little so that you get an idea of just what it is that you're up against.
A second after they finished speaking, Akuru's computer suddenly made a loud buzzing sound, followed by the screen exploding, showering both Nezu and Akuru in sparks that caused them to yell out in pain and claw at their faces as the sensitive flesh was singed. Taiyang swept the now flaming computer off the desk, while All Might grabbed the fire extinguisher and put it to work while Sukuuchi went to check on the victims of Umbra's apparent sabotage. Son of a bitch! Akuru snarled while he shoved Sukuuchi's hands away and glared at the ruins of his machine. That was my favorite laptop! How did that guy do all that? Crow demanded as he nudged the smoking remains with his boot. "If he really put a bug in my listening devices, that doesn't explain how he transferred it to the drive. He would have had to get the drive off of me, and I know that no one but me touched this thing while I was out there." "It wasn't through the drive," Akutori growled as All Might moved to run the sink in Nezu's office so that he could get a pair of cold, wet rags to soothe the burns. "Not the way you're thinking of anyway." "What does that mean?" "Our new enemy likely has something embedded in the signals that he uses whenever he streams his voice to his target's devices," Nezu replied as he blinked rapidly, trying to restore his eyesight. "Something that he could ping whenever it happens to be activated, even on a new device. He locked onto the signal that the audio file generated from Hikari's computer when we played it and used that to get into its system." "Can't we use that to find him?" Taiyang asked when All Might handed out the cold compresses that he had made. "If this guy is sending out some search signals from his hijacked devices or whatever, can't we just identify it based on that and trace it back to the source? Like reverse echolocation? Is that a thing?" Maybe it could be if we were in a third world country in the 21st century. Akutori snapped as he clamped a cool rag onto his agitated skin. "Do you have any idea how many signals are constantly being sent to and from satellites with a search program running like the one he just used? Forget trying to find a needle in a haystack. Finding that would be like finding a diamond in the Sahara Desert blindfolded." "Do we have any other ways of finding this guy?" Tsukuuchi asked as he scratched at his hair with a pensive look on his face. "People's lives are on the line here." "We start with the audio file that was broadcasting directly from my computer," Akutori hissed as he dabbed at a particularly sensitive spot in his eyelid. "I've got a computer that I've never hooked up to the internet with a program that I designed myself for editing videos. I'll use that so the signal won't ping to Umbra, whoever the hell he is." "How many computers do you have?" Taiyang asked the boy. "That's not important right now." Tsukuuchi then decided to say, "I'll get the reports from the bombs that went off if I can. Might be that he was misleading us about the real name thing, but if we can get any kind of information about the bomb itself, it might get us a start. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to get Ruby and the rest of them ready to pack," Taiyang said as he started for the door. "We're taking the first flight back to the States tonight." "The hell you are, Tai!" Crow shouted as he lowered his arm from where he had thrown another flask, even as his victim turned around with an incredulous look on his face. "Did you forget that there's hostages involved in this? We can't endanger their lives by pulling the girls out." "None of those hostages are my daughters, and I'm not interested in seeing them become the pawns in some sick game that's meant to get at him and his brother," the blonde man shouted back. "I'm sorry, but those people are not my concern, and I am not going to lose Yang and Ruby the way that we lost Summer." There was a brief, awkward silence that was broken by Crow's derisive snort. "Hate to tell you this, Tai, but the situation's out of your hands. You can try and be a good dad all you want, but those girls have dedicated themselves to becoming heroes like their mom. They earned the licenses that prove that they are capable and obligated to make these decisions when they come. If they decide to stick around because of what's at stake, then that's their decision as heroes." He walked past his old friend with a stony expression on his face, only pausing at the door long enough to say over his shoulder, "Summer would never run out on a situation like this, so when the hell makes you think that her daughters will?" Taiyang visibly deflated at those words, and his eyes sunk in as if he had aged 5 years in as many seconds. Seeing this, All Might approached while Crow left to say, "I'm so sorry that your daughters are caught up in this mess, sir. But several of those commission people have families with children in grade school who don't deserve what this maniac is promising to do to them if we act out." "This is also something that he's revealed. Probably on purpose, but either way, it helps us catch him," Akutori said as he lowered the rag to reveal a series of angry-looking scorch marks across his face. One of them had caused his left eye to swell shut, but his right eye shone with something like a malice as he plastered a Cheshire smile onto his face. "Whoever this is, they think that Kurai did them dirty and now they're out for revenge. Our list of suspects has to do with people that my brother has helped to put away. I'm going to find the bastard who thinks he's good enough to hoodwink me and torture my brother through the use of hostages." "And blow up your computer? All right, so it's a little about the computer. Bite me!" Akutori snarled as he snatched up the flash drive and stormed out of the room. "I'll send for recovery girls or have the principal stay where he is." "What about you?" All Might called after him. "Too angry to want a medic, aren't you?" "I stand by what I said!" "Let him go, All Might," Nezu said, drawing the man back into the room to look back at his boss. "His plan is sound, so I intend to let him pursue for the time being." "And what will we be doing in the meantime, sir?" "We will prepare to inform our students of this stakes involved regarding this new enemy, and then we will do our jobs as heroes. The little animal relayed from beneath the cloth that he was practically wearing on his head. We may not be able to move against Umbra in public, but our students are capable of great things. I have every faith that one of those great things will be finding this enemy and bringing him to justice. Akadori stormed into the support lab with a dark look in his good eyes. He made a beeline straight for his personal workstation before coming to a stop over his tools, breathing hard while his hands shook on the table. He had already loaded the files that he needed into his computer and was now running his descrambler program on them, but it was set to take a while. Unable to keep a straight focus on what that might have sped the process along, he had taken himself out of his dorm and just started walking. He couldn't bear to tell his brother and their friends the bad news just yet, so he made sure to avoid them while he skulked around the campus before winding up in the lab. The designs before him danced behind a veil of red while measurements and materials all flew about in his skull at a nauseating speed. Just as he was about to raise his fists above his head to slam them down in a violent, but admittedly futile, gesture of rage, he felt a surprisingly strong grip fall on his shoulder, causing him to look over with a glare at whoever had interrupted his potential raging. Normally I can work through any kind of noise that comes through this place, but you don't look like someone who should be using power tools, said Mei Hatsume as she took a half step away from him, her hands up in a surrendering gesture. What happened? Did Mr. Powerloader finally fire you? No, he growled. Worse. One of your projects blast you? Worse. Did your brother die again somehow? No, don't even joke about that. Did one of your designs for the school security upgrades get shut down by the principal? No. Are you going to tell me what's going on, or are you just going to freak out again and blow up half the stuff in the lab? Hatsume asked as she put her hands down with a frown. Mr. Powerloader will definitely fire you if you do that again, which I really wouldn't mind most of the time, but I made a breakthrough on the intracranial implant tech once you made me consider a gallium circuit, and I don't want to lose all that work. Wait, you solved the interface issue? Akadori asked, his anger pausing for just a moment. How? We kept thinking the best place to install the interface would be with the spinal tap, since practically all the nerves run through it from the brain to the body, she told him as she held up a new-looking schematic. Still causes latency issues that could affect not only the tech's response time, but impede the host's organic reactions too. Then it hit me. We need to be targeting the brain's reactive center itself, not the conduits. A direct permanent implant on the cerebellum tissue to create the interface, Akadori replied incredulously after skimming the new design with his good eye. Do you have any idea how dangerous that procedure could be? We're talking paralysis, probably throughout the whole body if this were to go wrong. But if it succeeded, it would work with zero latency, May argued. The response time would be even faster than the signals that travel from our brain to the rest of our body. The risks are too high, Akadori said with a rapid shake of his head. I will not be part of a project that renders one of my friends to a half-dead vegetable who can't even regulate when they have to go to the toilet. I've been there. It ain't fun. Then help me perfect this design so it does exactly what it means to, and nothing worse, Hatsume shot back. My babies always require trial and error, but even I know that I can't have room for even one mistake with this project. Failure is the mother of invention, but I don't want the father of this project to be the Grim Reaper. When Akadori paused and gave her a somewhat befuddled but still angry look, she rolled her eyes and said, Okay, the metaphor kind of broke down, but you get what I'm saying. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. And since you're the smartest person ever, or whatever you're always telling me, then you know how important it is that we get this one right. And what if I'm not the smartest person around? Akadori asked her in a strangely subdued tone, given how angry he still looked. What if I've been wrong about how smart I actually am this whole time? What if I'm no better than David Shield, too smart to see the mistakes that were staring me in the face all along? Duh, she answered while looking at him like he was stupid. So what if you're not the smartest person ever? David Shield got caught and locked up because he committed a crime. That doesn't mean that he didn't make a lot of amazing tech. Whatever's got you all worked up, you're not any dumber than you were this morning, and all of your inventions still work fine, right? I'm sure whatever's happened, you're going to find a way to prove that you're actually still the smartest person around. Akadori stared down at the plans for a few moments before he let those words bounce around in his head before he spoke again. I am not the smartest person around, he finally said in a tired voice. He then grabbed up a pencil and put it to the paper as he added, That title belongs to the one who humiliated me and remotely blasted my tech to prove a point today. But with a little help, it's not going to stay that way for long. Grab those VR goggles and gloves we made last week. Time to put them to practical use. Music to my ears, Hatsume grinned maniacally. As she moved to get the requested tool, she then took the time to ask, What happened to your tech? Ask me that again in the next 24 hours, I'll flunk you for the semester. And he's back.
Set the station like the rage consume you, and like a wildfire burning through you. Built in a coffin from confetti and confessions. Maybe there will be a lesson in the rubble when it's through. Buried in metal and a million memories. The temperature is rising to 1,000 degrees. I never ever learned to let go of the pain. I'll make it all burn till nothing remains.
So what do we think?
There's a lot to unpack here. Why don't we start at the beginning?
The main thing being that Akuduri Ex Machina, as some people have called him, now has a foil.
Yes.
Big time. But we can start with the actual beginning of the chapter. What was how'd you like the take on Kurai and Ida's, how do I put, like, not new dynamic, but like it's kind of been a minute since it's been just the two of them, and they're like they're not best buddies anymore, but you can still tell that the brotherhood is there.
Yeah, it was nice to just see them casually hanging out and just chilling.
Yeah, Ida's like not looking up from his books. He's just handing him like, for some reason the thought of him handing tools while he's not stopping reading was really funny to me.
I love it because I think it reminds me of how as we get older we kind of begin to have different interests from our friends, but we still have that camaraderie and that love for each other. Yeah. And it's, I love seeing that they're still spending that time, even though they're totally in different zones right now. Yeah. And it's not to say that Kurai's not a good student. He's a great student. But, he's having his downtime and doing his thing with his bike, which does not interest Ida because he doesn't need a bike because he has bikes he has jet engines in his legs. But he'll humor him, and that's a good way to spend time with his friend. When
I originally I don't know if you remember this or not, but I originally had this scene where it was going to be the two of them studying together.
Yeah, I remember.
But then I remembered, I was like, I don't know what prompted me to remember, but I was like, I haven't seen Kurai do anything with his bike in a hot minute. And I was like, I remember that he brought the bike to Nabu Island. So I was like, I had to make a decision. I was like, did the bike get destroyed or did it make it out?
That was a neat little anecdote.
Yeah, I decided that if I was gonna have the bike destroyed, there would have to be more emotion attached to it. I didn't want it to be something that would happen off screen. Yeah, because that means too much to like not to the same degree, but I feel like Kurai losing the bike would be like Harry losing Hedwig. Yeah, because it connects him to his childhood and at a time that he loved, and his uncle gave it to him.
Absolutely. No, it's and it makes sense because it's there was a lot of destruction, but the whole island was not destroyed. There's how many times do you see a town that gets hit by a tornado and there's just an entire block that's just fine? Oh yeah, the tornado will just hop from one yard to the next, and the house in between is fine. There's one cracked window and that's it. Yeah. So it's that happens with natural disasters, and it makes sense that there'd be plenty of stuff on the island that wasn't totally wrecked.
Oh yeah, we even see we even saw it in the movie, while the students are helping to make repairs and stuff, there were operating vehicles and the like. So to me, it wasn't unreasonable to think that the bike would have only been partially damaged. Yeah, yeah. So this is kind of Kurai's first chance to be all right. He's I'm catching up with my schoolwork. I've been working out like crazy. He's I'm working out. He's I'm working with Gran Torino. He doesn't have a whole lot of downtime, but he finally has a minute where he's okay, I can work on this.
Yes, he's neglected his baby. But no, it's cool, and I like the conversation because they're able to kind of get some growth, and I like that Ida. He's not petty. He's a reasonable person.
He can be, depending on what. I feel like there's anybody has something that they can be petty about.
Well, yeah, but he's also reasonable. Yeah, and you can usually and you see that in him in the original story. Yeah. If you can bring him around to your side, it takes him a little bit, and he may go with his heels dug in, kicking and screaming, but he can be talked around to certain things, even if he's stubborn. Yes. And so I like that he's able to say, no, I recognize that she acted professionally, and it looks like you two are going to be able to be professionals even though you have this relationship, and I respect that.
Yep.
And I liked that he was able to they were able to have that conversation, because I know that was something that was a problem earlier on in the story. So
and it hadn't been a problem in a while either, but you still kind of got the sense that Ida was just kind of like, he's keeping his mouth shut because his own morality forces him to.
Oh, well, Ida's a very principled
But now
person.
he's like at a point where he's like, no, he's like, okay, I see what they're I see what they're about. It works.
They're an exception to the rule.
He's like, I don't have to fight him. He's like, I don't have to fight this.
Yeah. Yeah, in general, it's not good practice. It's not usually a good idea, but he sees that it's working for the time being, so
yes.
He can recommend them.
Yeah. I liked getting to have that moment where Kurai is like actually tempted to go work at the Ida agency, because that would have been something that him and Ida would have talked about when they were kids.
Absolutely.
Like they absolutely would have been like, yeah, we're gonna
be heroes together.
Tenya. It's like obviously he's gonna intern at the family agency. Like that's just kind of a given in their line of work. And, Kurai's his best friend. Of course he's going to tag along if they want to become heroes. And, Tensei loves both of them. He's like, yeah, he knows they're talented. He knows they're dedicated. He has no reason not to take them along. But things change.
And I appreciate how Kurai is, he's wanting, for lack of a better term, he's wanting to expand his repertoire and work with a variety of different professionals. And right now, Gran Torino is probably the best person for him to be working on, especially because of his quirk.
Yeah. He did say, they did have a moment where they were like he needs to stick with Gran Torino at least up until the war happens.
Yeah.
Because he needs to get every advantage he can in mastering One for All as quickly as possible, given the stakes that are about to arrive. But after that, he's like, I'm keeping my options open after that.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of I don't know. It's because it's the only thing I know. I always bring it back to teaching, but I know a lot of people who, while they're deciding what kind of teacher they want to be, they'll be long-term subs, and they'll pop around to different schools, experience different faculties, different ways things are run. That way they can get a feel for what they like before they actually commit, And it's a great way to do it, and it makes sense to do this in this area.
We actually see an example of this as early as season 2 when Uraraka goes in for her internship with Gunhead Martial Arts. Everybody's like, "You're going with the martial arts agency? Why? I thought you wanted to be a rescue hero."
That's what I was thinking.
She's like, "Well, I want to expand my." She's like, "I want to expand my skill set. The more skills I have, the better I can be as a hero in general."
Doesn't Uraraka do the same thing?
That's what I said. Uraraka.
Oh, sorry, my brain is not.
It's okay. Yeah.
Sorry, it's been a long day. I was out away from home 15 hours today, so I'm between working and volunteering. It was a little wild.
Boy.
Over it. But no, back to the story. After that little conversation, do we go straight to Kurai, or no?
We don't see Kurai after that.
No, not Kurai. Akurui.
Akurui, yeah.
We go to is it him?
How'd you like the? The banter between him and Hatsume is so much fun.
He and Hatsume are hilarious because they're just like, I think that one of the readers at one point was like, I wonder what would happen if they were working together or something like that.
Yeah,
and it's like you get a great taste, and it just these.
You have these two people who are used to being the smartest ones in the room,
and they're not okay with having another genius in the room, and they're so different because she is just like, they're great examples of the type A and the type B personality having to work together, because she's just all over the place, and it's just like, oh, forget it. Who cares if the plan's not totally there? We'll just
she's
try it.
She's the one that's okay with failing 2,000 times to make the light bulb, and he's the one who's like, no,
must plan and make sure that it will succeed at all costs,
or at least has to have the best chance of success.
Yes.
He's nothing is haphazard.
He's very he's analytical, and he's got that type A problem solving. I'm gonna assess all of the variables before I move forward. He's not trying to be wasteful with his materials.
It's more about being wasteful with his time, because if you think about it, up until recently, up until having Eri on hand, he was on the assumption that he was on a limited timetable. Even before he landed himself in a wheelchair, he knew that his tumor was probably going to kill him before he reached his adulthood. So he's used to operating under the mindset that he doesn't have any time to waste.
He also, it's really funny though, because usually when you have the whole child genius archetype, for lack of a better word, they're like the one who lacks empathy, but he actually has concern and empathy for others. Oh yeah, much more so than Hatsume, right?
Yeah,
is that her name?
Yeah, she's all about the. See, what's interesting is that I don't know if you remember or not, but Akururi, after Kurai died, kind of had a moment where he was like thinking about differences between him and his brother, and he was like thinking to himself about how he actually envied Kurai's ability to act with the big picture in mind. Whereas him, like, he sees all these things, but he only ever focused on one thing. So, I'm not saying that him having empathy is a new thing, but I am going to say that him actively working to see the bigger picture is.
So he's being more intentional,
yes.
is what you're saying,
yes.
about trying to be thinking about other people and how his actions affect them.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, it's not like this, like, it didn't merit, like, this great big revelation thing. Like, to me, it was like, I'll let him have that moment where he thinks about it, and then, going forward, his actions can reflect this change that he's experiencing.
Meanwhile, Hatsume is going all Elon Musk and Grimes about, like, brain implants and such, and he's like, what the heck? You're gonna kill people!
No, that doesn't come till the end of the chapter. That doesn't come
sorry. Oh, that's right.
Because at the beginning of the chapter, they're arguing about doing a spinal tap, which is kind of what, like, picture, like, Doc Ock. Like, so they're thinking, like, put something in the spinal cord, so that way the nerves that are traveling up and down your spine, to the rest of your body, you can
communicate with the
communicate
brain.
it with what they're trying to build.
Yeah.
But they're having problems with that, obviously.
Yes.
I did throw in a little bit of a Spider-Man Easter egg in there. I'm interested to see if anybody finds it. I'll tell you about it off camera, and if somebody picks it up next time, I'll confirm it. And if not,
I caught a different Marvel.
Oh yeah, Dr. Banner. Yeah. Because I've covered, like, the Marvel heroes exist to some degree, like, out in America and other countries. Yeah.
So that's why I was like, Dr. Banner. I caught that one.
That burn on Akururi. Oh my.
That was hilarious. Meanwhile, poor
it had to be something that would get even him to stop and be like, wait, what?
And then her just complete, like, the way she's so literal cracks me. I'm like, she has to be on the spectrum. She just reminds me of some of my students. Just rattles off the dictionary definition. Like, why are you asking me this?
She's like to her, she's like, you're a doctor. You should know this. She's like, I'm not a doctor.
That was I
love that running gag too. Like, everybody's just like, leave it to the doctor. I'm not a doctor. Oh my god.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we've got poor is it Kaminari?
Kaminari, he's trying to get his aiming gear fixed.
I just need my uniform, and Hatsume's going all Hatsume on him.
I loved having a moment where he's just like, oh great, now these ones are flirting, and Akururi's like, that is not what's happening at all. Oh, yeah. And Hatsume's just like, what? She's like, that's not even on either of their radar.
Yeah, oh yeah. They've got this hilarious chemistry going on.
Oh yeah. I love it.
And so
it's like, it's like if Winry from Full Metal Alchemist like had a counterpart almost. Like,
I guess so.
Like, because Hatsume's because Winry's like always obsessed with her work, and she's always like very excited whenever she gets an opportunity to learn more stuff. Hatsume takes that and like just dials it up to 11.
Yeah.
And like
to where she almost has no personality outside of that.
Almost.
Almost. I said almost.
Yeah, there's just enough to be like, okay, this is a character that we can accept in this social setting.
There's always that one kid though.
Yeah.
There's always that one kid, and it would not be a school without that one kid.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when she makes Deku the Air Force gloves, when she delivers them to him, she's like chasing after this snitch-looking thing, like the golden snitch from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I was tempted to specifically make the thing that Akururi throws at Kaminari. I was gonna have it like be a prototype bludger, but I was like, it would be funny, but it's gonna like.
He's not there yet.
No, he's there. No. He's like.
No, I mean, like, as far as never mind.
No, I'm like, it would just do like it would take too much effort away from the conversation that was happening.
Exactly.
For it, like, it would be funny, but it would kind of undercut what the other things that were happening.
I agree. So then we have Crow crashing the party.
Yeah, he just shows up. He's like he's all beat the stuffing out of him.
Falling to pieces.
And he's just like, what just happened to you?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh man.
It's
In a very My Hero Academia way, it just gives me vibes of Aizawa just rolling up in the sleeping bag with the juice packet, the juice box, just like.
Yeah. Except
dead.
that Crow's leaving bloodstains behind.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the adults in your life are just falling to pieces while you're having your fun.
And Akira is like trying to put two fires out with once. He's like trying to make sure the Hatsume doesn't screw up their project, but he's got to do his job and deal with Crow. Which one does he do?
Yeah. So anyway, moving into that big meeting.
Oh man. It's been a minute since I've had I don't remember honestly when was the last time I had like a major plot development that didn't involve Kurai in some degree.
Yeah. It's pretty, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing how everyone else felt about it. Yeah. But we have Crow on this special mission and he finds out about the safety commission.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was like it was interesting. Like I knew I wanted him to get, but like figuring out how to segue him onto that track was the tricky part. But then I remembered, like I was watching the 5th and 6th season of My Hero again. I was like, oh wait, the Meta Liberation Arc, they have pro heroes, they have politicians on them. And Crow would find out about that.
Yep.
So he would start tailing those people.
Absolutely.
And in doing so, he would find something else.
And so we get early
way worse.
We get early truth bombs about
Lady
Nagant.
Yep.
So we start kind of wondering.
So that'll be like I'm sure people can imagine that's going to be a splash effect in and of itself, because in the show, you don't like Deku's the first one to find out about how she was set up and all that. I wouldn't say framed necessarily, because she did murder a dude. But the way that it was covered up, and like how she was essentially brainwashed, So now we have people on the outside who are like, oh my god, like she got screwed.
Yeah. So it's like, will she?
I know we have some Lady Nagant fans out there, so
definitely.
I'm interested to see what their take on this will be.
She's a cool character.
Oh yeah.
She's a really cool character. So I'm curious to see how that develops. That being said, I think what everybody is probably the most curious about is this mysterious new player,
Umbra.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like? What were your feelings like as the conversation progressed?
I was
when they're first listening to the recorded conversation from the dead dude.
So I was definitely taken aback. I wasn't sure whether you were introducing a new character, using an existing character, and I was like, man, guy, I get you need to level the scales because we got the Ruby characters and Akurui, but this is crazy.
Forget the Ruby characters. I need to level Akurui.
Yeah, and so I was really overwhelmed because I'm like, oh my gosh, man, like another villain, another one, but I really like how it pans out.
Like they talk about, it's like this is a different arena. They're like they're not in this for like the big battles and everything. They're gonna play. They're there to play games with people.
We've got anime, Sherlock, and oh my gosh,
Ellen Light.
Ellen Light. There we go. There we go. I was gonna say Sherlock and Moriarty, but Ellen Light. Yes, we have Ellen Light now in My Hero Academia.
Something like that.
Playing a new chess game, and so I'm really excited to see how people respond, because I don't want to give too much away. Yeah, is the problem.
Yeah. But like, I mean, I don't know. Like, what was you? How did you feel like when all of a sudden Umber was like in the room, more or less?
That freaked me out.
That freaked you out.
Oh my gosh, I was like, what? You had
the same same reaction as everybody else in the room.
I think I had Akurui's anger when his computer exploded. I was like, "What the heck? They can't trace this guy. What's happening? No, Akurui's supposed to be smart. He's supposed to be the one who can figure out what's going on all the time." Yep. And so I was really frustrated that Akurui was baffled, and so that was like, whoa.
It's like, yeah, because again, this is a very it's interesting because like Akururi has always been very physically challenged, and like he's kind of accepted that. But this is an arena where he is like just used to dominating.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about it with Nezzy. He's like, yeah, try to keep an eye out for competition, in case they show up, because he's like, more or less looking forward to a good time.
You definitely set the chapter up well, because he's being a little bit arrogant for a lot of this chapter. He's like, oh yeah, and
the problem is that
he has a right to be.
That's the word. Like that's the in real life, that's the arrogance that's the most difficult to deal with, is like when they are basing their overconfidence, but it's warranted.
Yeah, it's based on fact that they have that edge.
Yeah.
And so then that's what happens when you don't have peers to sharpen,
When you're peerless.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I didn't catch the title of the chapter the last time, and this time I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was like, how do I put this? Like I've been dropping like little bits and pieces of this Umbra character like throughout like chapters leading up to this, but now we finally like get a look at them, and I'm like,
look, quote unquote,
quote unquote, like
we've been introduced.
Yeah, like I wanted to like you were talking about Akururi, like becoming like his empathy. I kind of wanted to like invert that almost.
Yeah.
I
caught that.
Yeah, where like this person is just utter ruthlessness. Like they.
Well, that's why I draw the Sherlock parallel, because it reminds me of a lot of the Sherlock villains, where it's just like these people who are super smart but completely lack empathy and are just morbidly curious what'll happen if they do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Because they're bored. So that being said, like I think that's about all I have to say.
Yeah, it's like,
I'm just really excited to hear.
What did you think of Crow and Ty's interactions throughout?
That one was really interesting, because I think I see Ty as a father, like that knee-jerk reaction. Oh yeah, I'm getting my kids out of here. They don't need to be wrapped up in this drama. But Crow, it's really interesting because despite being intoxicated as usual, he's got the common sense in the room, because he's like, look, you have teenagers, and if you think you're just gonna yank them out of this situation when they have already been through life and death situations with these kids, good luck.
Nezu was the one who pointed that out.
Oh, really?
Crow brought up another couple of points. He was like, okay. He did partially bring up the point where it's like, yes, these are their friends. It's like, you really want them to let their friends take the hit for them.
There's other people's lives on the line.
But the other thing was that he talked about Summer, Ruby's mom. And honestly, that was an interesting bit of editing to go through, because I, for a while, couldn't decide if Crow would refer to Summer as both of their mom, Ruby and Yang, but then I went back and I looked at source material, and it's like, Yang talks about Summer like it was her mom, like as her mom.
Yeah,
and I feel like Crow, even though Raven, Crow technically is not Ruby's uncle.
Yeah,
he's only Yang's uncle.
Yeah.
But because of the way their family dynamic has come about, he loves both of them. He cares about them the same way. And it's a whole tangled mess of things that happens with their family dynamic, but long and short of it is that they do think of them as Summer's daughters because she's the one that raised them.
Yes.
And so to kind of bring that up and throw it in Ty's face, like in some manner it is cruel, but he kind of needed it. Because Crow was like, okay, first of all, these are your kids. Second of all, these are Summer's kids, and they're training to be heroes. What about anything in this equation makes you think that they're going to back out?
Yeah. So I thought it was, but they both had solid points, and but it was a realistic dynamic, because, I think a lot of times in these stories, the adults in the room decide something, and I'm like, really? Was everyone really in agreement about this?
Yeah.
Because I can see a million reasons why this is not a good idea, right? And so I like that there was a little bit of a push and pull happening, because I think that's a weakness in at least the original series, that there, a lot of times these decisions are being made and there's very little pushback happening. And it happens sometimes, and I feel like especially with the dynamic between All Might and Aizawa that you kind of developed in your story, it makes more sense. And again, as a teacher who works with faculty with lots of big personalities, there's always going to be a differing opinion somewhere. Yep. And there's always going to be a lot of conflict before you come to a answer, because you're, at the end of the day, you're dealing with kids' futures, and it's a really important decision. So I like that there was some dialogue and back and forth happening.
So there is some of it in the show. It's just not in manga. It's not just covered too heavily. But one example that I can think of where All Might actually was in opposition to what happened was when the faculty was voting on whether or not the first years would be allowed to do work studies.
I remember that.
All Might was like, Dagger's like, why can't you introduce me to somebody? He's like, well, first of all, I voted against it in the first place.
I went to the IC meeting. I've heard that so many times. When did you guys decide this? You weren't at the IC meeting. You don't have a say. You didn't vote. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's just being a teacher, yo.
But yeah, like it is. Well, how do I put, like, the stakes just got so much higher. Like, and I think part of the worst bit is that the students don't even know yet.
Yeah.
And like when they know, they'll have to be made understood that they are just pawns in this game.
Yep.
Like they can take the correct actions or the incorrect actions, but either way, they're just pawns in a game at this point.
Yep.
Which is gonna be, oh boy.
Yeah, it adds a whole new layer. So.
Yeah. What'd you think of the ending scene with Akira and Hatsume? Like, where he's just, like, about to absolutely lose his crap in the lab, and she's kind of like, please don't do that again.
Yeah, it's kind of neat that, well, it's just...
Because we were talking about how, like, she has, like, almost no personality outside of her desire to invent.
Yeah, but she does, I mean, she is a human being with feelings and some common sense. I mean, she wouldn't be able to survive in school without that.
Yeah.
Despite all of the anime nonsense.
Yeah.
But no, I like that she's able to be like, bring him back down to earth, even though she's her own special type of chaotic. She like, still has that moment where she can be like, bro,
there's a lot of friction there, but at the same time they somehow work together well.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's fun. It's very
like I felt like it was time for her to have because she's a more strangely enough, in some ways she's more involved in this story than she is in the original.
Oh yeah.
Because of Akudori largely. And I felt like it was time for her to have because when while Kurai was in the hospital, Akudori kind of strong-armed her into doing things his way at one point, but she did so very reluctantly, and it wasn't until he showed her why that she was like, yeah, okay,
but at
whatever.
This point, they've been working together enough that they're starting to trust each other a little bit.
But here, I felt like it was important that she be like, look, I can fail until I get this right. But we can't take it. She's like, but with something like this, we can't take any failures.
And I like that she's actually admitting that she needs help too, because that's some good. She needs help not to fail.
Yeah. She doesn't mind failing, but she understands with this project, she needs to not fail.
And I love that, because I'm sure Mr. Powerloader's been grinding his teeth over having those two in the same room. But I'm sure as a teacher, he's like in the background, and he's not here at the moment, but watching them working together, I'm sure he's just like cheering them on, like, okay, they're good for each other.
I'm curious to see if anybody's going to figure out what they're working on together before it gets revealed, because you know what they're working on, right? Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
I'm so excited.
Yep.
We'll let you guys hypothesize about that, but in the meantime,
we'll go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you so much for coming in, listening in for the podcast. Thank you for joining us for the first podcast of Your Hero Academia Enmity. 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 I have such a hard time pronouncing that word correctly. I don't know why. I have no idea why that one's so hard.
We all have those words. It's fine.
So, quick heads up. The next few chapters are actually going to be an original arc that I've designed. You will find it nowhere in the manga or the anime. You remember what's coming next?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. No, it's...
I'm just as excited as you guys. And I'm sure as soon as he reads it, I'll remember, but I don't remember right now.
So, I've had it's been kind of a hit or miss with the original arcs. Because the original arc where Kurai did his internship with Gang Orca, that was a hit. The bit where I had... like kind of people across Japan like feeling the loss of Kurai. That was more of a miss. There were some hits, but it was more of a miss, I would say. It wasn't as well received. And then I had the Future arc, which was very well received. And then the hospital arc again, like kind of
I think I know I think I know what's happening.
Yeah,
it's the one you wrote when we were on our trip home.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, I'm
That's
ready.
the one I came
I'm
up with when we were on
excited.
the trip. Yeah,
this is a good one.
I'm interested to see what people make of this one, because this one's gonna get to show a little bit more rescue work than villain fighting, which I'm kind of which I'm like, I haven't done a lot of that in any of my writing. So I'm like, I'm definitely pushing into new territory in multiple ways here. So I hope it turns out to your guys' liking. I've enjoyed it. So
All right.
Well, with that said, I hope you guys have a plus ultra couple of weeks until we see you on our next podcast for Pokemon Warpath.
All right.
Catch you
See
later.
you later. Bye.